Hello, how are you all doing today? I hope you are doing well, especially given the events of the last couple days, weeks, and what have you. I wanted to start today with the most hollow thing that I could say, that my thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of the mass shooting in Texas and to all the others that have probably happened that the news hasn't picked up on. I I was watching somebody earlier today who was talking about this, and I just he was a basketball coach, and he got so mad. He got so angry and was just like, we have to ask ourselves one question anytime we go out and vote. Ask ourselves who actually wants to protect our kids from the horrible things that are actually happening in this country. And as we're getting ready for the midterms, hopefully people will ask those questions and actually get out and vote. But I don't even know that feels like a solution anymore. We've been saying it for so long. I was watching somebody else who pointed out that this goes all the way back to Bobby Kennedy, the day after Martin Luther King was shot. And ever since then, we've been asking for the same things over and over and over again. But as dark and depressed as I can be about the state and nature of humanity all the time, I do believe that there's more positive out there than there is negative. There is more good than there is bad. We do tend to come together as a people more than we try to divide ourselves through hate. And it gets so tiresome waiting for the long arc of history to bend towards justice. But I do believe that it will eventually get there, as long as we don't get tired of the fight and we continue to push to get us there. So, today we're going to be talking about world building. And I felt that I had to say something, especially with today's topic, which is world building for the real world. If you are writing a mystery, a suspense, anything that happens in our really real world, how do you do world building for that? How do you make it come together and make it feel real? And one of the things that we're going to be talking about first is the difference between grimdark and reality. But before we get into that, let me introduce the wonderful people that are here with me. I am joined by the wonderful Megan McCarthy, who made this episode possible by requesting it. And I really love that, because it means at least one person cares about what I am going to be talking about that week. So please, if you have things that you would like us to talk about, do let me know. It makes me very, very happy. I'm also joined by the wonderful Carrie H. Arthur. I wouldn't literally be here today if it wasn't for Kat Leo, who texted me to make sure that I remembered, hey, you've got a stream today. Oh, yeah. Yes, that is a thing. And the amazing writer, I've got all of my flash fictions going everywhere out in the world, too. Whether they get published, they will haunt the memories, dreams, and nightmares of those who have read them for the rest of their lives. Laura Nettles. Yes.
I submitted 2 yesterday, and one of them, the third one I was going to submit, mine was just a little too long, and they're like, query if you can submit if it's too long. So I did, and they're like, we like your concept, please submit. So hopefully, I don't know.
That's exciting.
It's the Lovecraft LARP one in the 80s.
Oh, that's a good one.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I was running late today because one of the final tests for Super Secret Master Project 1 is going really well. And I think it has narrowed its way down to literally, okay, that's the path. That's the path forward. So I am very, very excited, but more on that when the announcement finally comes out. But So happy. I'm so happy. Let's say hello to the people that are here. Hello, Maggie. How are you doing? Hello, Nikki. How are you doing? There's Laura playing double duty in the chat because I like saying double duty because I am a child. Hello, CB. How are you doing today? Hello, Cool Gamer. I hope you are having a wonderful day. Yeah, it feels so powerless and so empty. I mean, I am a spiritual person. Some of you probably know, I'm actually going through my ordination classes again right now because I'm seeking yet another ordination in another group. And I'm a very religious person, and it's not that I don't believe that prayer can do things, because I have seen it do things, but I also believe that faith without works is dead. So if you are not actually putting effort behind your thoughts and prayers, they're not going to come to anything. Like, oh, I'm going to pray that somebody might someday make the world a safer place. Yeah, you're in Congress, my dude. You're in Congress. You can legislate this. Like you can do something about it. So like, and for anybody out there who doesn't understand, that's actually from like James, like Jesus's brother said that in the Bible. Faith without works is dead. So I'm not coming from like far afield, strange, weird liberal land and saying that. But yeah, it's so hard to go and do some of this sometimes. And I really feel sorry for the people that like on the days that these happen are like, and now welcome to my comedy show. Because, oh, that's a room that is not primed for laughter. Yes. Yes, please. Please, because this is something we've been trying to talk to a lot of the people here about, because our county at least has a lot of discretion over how its police funding gets spent. And we've really been trying to get them to understand that, like, we need marital counselors more than police in a lot of these instances. We need, mental health professionals instead of police in a lot of these situations. There are so many other things that need to happen other than a person with a gun showing up. Like there's so many interventions that need to happen and need to happen early and beforehand. And I don't know, maybe even in schools where people like me who had a lot of issues in school was forced into counseling because I went to one of the good schools and had to sit down and take anger management classes when I was 17 years old because they saw that I was just a volcano of anger and rage. And while I do think that they misdiagnosed a lot of what that anger and rage was about in hindsight, the techniques that they taught me in dealing with it worked and helped me to keep my anger in check. And the fact that I had to go to a really good school in a really good neighborhood in a very prosperous town for that to be offered is wrong. That should just be a thing that we offer to people to make society better. It just should be. You're being accused of writing grimdark because you write real world problems. Yeah. See, to me though, grimdark is inherently hopeless. That to me is a big part of the definition of grimdark. And yeah, it's a thing. It's a problem. Community love. You came together to help others. Yeah. I mean, during the lockdown, we were allowed to give everybody, because we were able to get the PPP loans and the ELID. So we were able to continue paychecks, but we were allowed to pay people more if they actually showed up on site than if they were just staying at home during lockdown. And we didn't need everybody there. And the budget that we were given from the loan we were given didn't allow us to have everybody in the restaurant all the time, right? And we probably would not have wanted to have all the employees there, right? Because there really wasn't enough for everybody to do. And, we were in lockdown for a reason. And it was amazing to see how everybody decided to take turns and give more shifts to the people who had families and children so that they could get that extra income to help with the kids and stuff to help get through. And, it didn't have to be forced from above. We are inherently decent people. It's just that decency is easily twisted by fear, anger, and hate.
Mhm.
Because nobody thinks of themselves as the bad guy. Very well, I always correct myself when I say this, because Richard Ramirez definitely thought about himself as the bad guy, but he is the only villain in history that I know of who literally thought of himself as the bad guy. I'm glad. The problem is nothing changes, and because moneyed interests don't care.
Mhm.
And this is the bigger problem to me in all of this. No matter what country you're in, but especially in our country, we need to get money out of politics. Just get the money out,
Mhm.
because who are they going to listen to? Me or their donor that gave them a couple $1,000,000? Who are they like? Who are they going to be most likely to listen to?
Mhm.
Is it going to be me, who would like to have certain rights as a writer, or Jeff Bezos, who wants to do whatever he damn well pleases? Who are they going to listen to here? Probably not me. There's a good chance of it not being me. Hello, Spence. All of the lovelies. Yes. See, I hate that to be that person, but well, so yeah, yeah. No, we have to be realistic about a lot of this, because that's where I'm a part of a lot of activist groups, and fatigue is real, especially right now. Fatigue is real in like, if you know an activist, send them orange slices, something like, find something that they like that gives them, that'll help them like cheer up, whatever it is. Send them ice cream. I don't care. Whatever will cheer them up, because they need it right now. Because
Yeah, burnout is real,
burnout is real, and right now it just feels so hyper real for so many people.
especially because there's so many problems coming from different angles. It's like you don't have a time to breathe because there's always something going on that you have to fight against, and that gets exhausting after a while.
So when I go to the Order of the Sacred Earth meetings, every meeting starts with, "We have 7 years left to save the planet." And that's not hyperbolic. That's according to all the data. We have 7 years left to change things, or climate change is irreversible. Like the die will be cast in 7 years. And every meeting starts with that. And I get it. That is a good sense of urgency to try to get you to be out there and helping to make change. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I remember when you were saying 10. I remember when that was 12.
Yeah.
I'm watching this click down and I'm not liking it. I'm not liking it. Uh, so I think one of the first things, because we've been talking about it a lot, is there is a wonderful book called The Dictator's Handbook that I think every world builder should have, no matter what you're doing. I'm going to look it up and make sure I have that name right.
I'm assuming this is fictional.
No, well, no, it's actually it was based on somebody's doctoral thesis,
Oh,
Interesting.
where they studied how democracies fall and how tyrants rise up. So I think, yeah, it is. It's called The Dictator's Handbook. Why bad behavior is almost always good politics. Um, there are several books like this. This one was one that was really interesting, because it breaks basic politics down into what they call the keys to the kingdom,
Mhm.
and understanding how deals get made to keep people in power, and that when you understand that for some people the goal is simply power, how those deals can be made and cause societies to just completely crumble and fall apart. um I want to say it was CGP Grey did a whole series of videos based on this. His was, I think, called. Here, let me look that up real quick too. Because I think it was CGP Grey, but it's one of those things that we don't often take into effect how all of these things actually come about, and the issues that people are actually focusing on to get where they're going. Okay, so there's the Trouble with Tumbleweeds. I forgot how much I love his channel, and I'm just like scrolling backwards trying to see if I can find this video, because I think his video is called Rules for Rulers. May have been somebody else. It may have been Innuendo Studios who did it. I will have to look that up and find it, and if I do, I'll put it in the show notes. So I don't want to get too lost on this. But it's very important to understand how power actually works, and how that most of it is backroom deals, and like how privileges work, because that's something people miss a lot too. Hello, Jules. How are you doing today? Predicted humanity. Yeah. And at least Star Trek predicts that we're going to have a massive world war starting, I think, is it next year it starts? It's in the late 2020s. The Third World War happens, according to the original Star Trek timeline, and kills, I believe, 17 million people in the first couple weeks, a third of the population in total. And then people are like, that was a waste of time. But also, shortly thereafter, we run into aliens and go, oh, we're not alone. So that might be integral to that. Understand?
I can skip this timeline.
But the more things that have been going on, like we've skipped the eugenics war, so yay, that's a good thing. But it looks very much like we're heading towards a lot of the things that they predicted for now, and it's
Great.
sad. Yeah, it's sad. But all right,
People need to make better predictions. Like, why don't you predict that everybody, like, universal basic income is a thing and everybody lives happily ever? That would be, I like those kind of. Let's start funneling those ideas into the world.
so little off topic, but when Star Trek was originally done, Dean refused to allow them to ever say when the story took place. If you actually watch the original series, they never say the date. They do say the star dates, but they never say what century they're in, ever. It was only retroactively in TNG when they lock the dates in, because we know what year that show started. We are told what year the original Voyages of the Enterprise were, and all of the dates got set from there. And that's when time started getting crystallized on that timeline, because he had Gene's basic thought was that once we achieve technology that makes supply and demand meaningless, we will have to reform our economy and become better people, because there's no need. There's surplus food, there's surplus everything. Why are we still arguing over scraps as if there's just scraps?
Friends.
F this universe. I'm gonna make bread.
But see, this is the problem. We are already at that point now. We make more power than we need. We make more food than we need. We make enough food every year.
Shortages are basically man-made.
Yeah, they're artificial, and they are created by capitalistic rules that we have in place. We cannot donate our surplus food to the third world or to places where there are famines. Did you know the United States burns grain? Like, we literally destroy corn, grain, and milk products every year just to keep the prices of those up, inflated. We could just donate that to starving people instead of destroying it. But we don't,
Terrible.
because we have adopted an economic system that wants scarcity to be a factor,
Ooh.
so prices can be down.
Look who it is.
They're a while. Did y'all not notice till now? He's been there a while.
No, I was
Oh.
I was trying to behave.
I just noticed.
trying to behave.
It's been like 5 minutes.
I have been
I
looking
feel
at
like I
that
have
side
a
of the
bad
screen. So.
reputation when it comes to Joe, as things are, and I'm trying to be better. I'm bad at it, but I'm trying to be better. So, sorry, I can't stop looking at Spence's comment. I keep getting lost in Spence's, F the universe.
I'm gonna make bread.
I'm gonna make bread. Because, I feel that so much. All right. So, world building for the real world. This is something that I feel, for me, is lacking in so much of what is considered literary fiction. I feel like it is something that is lacking in a lot of mystery fiction. In fact, when you look at the mystery fiction that has endured, there is an odd amount of world building in there, from characterization to various locations that are built up that just to an almost mythic nature. I think this is one of the reasons, more than the writing, that we pay attention to Sherlock Holmes still.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's so much world there to get lost in, from all of the characters to the locations that are so well fleshed out for so many places. Because I love Sherlock Holmes, but Arthur Conan Doyle was not the best writer in the world. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read. Thank you for the show, Carrie. I don't, like I said, I don't know that anybody's ever read Arthur Conan Doyle, but it's the world building that holds us to it. The character of Sherlock Holmes, the dichotomy of Sherlock Holmes, and all of the fictitious London that he lived in, and all the places that are there that holds us in.
Sherlock Holmes is the reason I'm terrified of snakes, because of the case of the speckled band. Oh, that story is so terrifying, especially when you're younger and you sleep directly under the vent in the ceiling, and that's exactly not to give it away, but that's exactly where the little snaky comes out.
These stories are hundreds of years old. I think that spoilers are okay now.
You never know. Someone might develop an interest in reading the Conan Doyle stories and be
I recommend them. They're great. There's a collection of them that came out that are read by Stephen Fry. And if anybody is native born to read the Sherlock Holmes books, it's Stephen Fry. It's definitely Stephen Fry, and I highly recommend them. They're good books.
But the world building in that one was pretty good too. Now that I think about it,
so let's just go all the way back to World Building 101 real quick, just so that we have a firm understanding of this. World building is not all the stuff that you're going to make up. World building is, here are my settings, here are my characters. And remember that episode we did, starting this run of Fantasy First Aid, on what is place? It's having a place. Your story, if it is set in London, does not mean you have a setting. That does not mean you have a setting at all. I've read a lot of stories set in London, some of which could have really been anywhere. I mean, London plays no part in it whatsoever. And others are so specifically that version of London, that it's hard to wrap your head around how other stories that happen in London are existing in the same world, because they made it so particularly them. And that's what world building does. It takes these locations off of Google Maps, Because let's be honest, every time we write from something in the real world, we load up Google Maps, we drag the little yellow guy down, we put him on the street view, and we start looking around. So we're describing the place right. We all do it. We all know we do it. And that is not putting a place in. If your story takes place in a very specific town, why? Answer that, if not in the text, for yourself. Why does it happen here? This is the root of all good world building. Why is this here? Because if you don't have a good reason, it needs to be cut from your story. It just needs to be cut. It has no purpose being there. And if it does have a reason, when you answer the question, why, you will turn it into something magical and wonderful and amazing. Why, oh why, does everything John Waters do take place in Baltimore? Because Baltimore is a crazy cesspool of filth and circumstance that is John Waters. And his Baltimore is a character in and of itself. From Polyester, where you're out in the suburbs, just north of Baltimore, where all of the affluent people live, and wondering why those porn purveyors are now in our neighborhood. I love Polyester. I think it's an underrated movie by him. To the madcap adventures of either Hairspray, you want to talk about, be it the original movie or the musical, on through, even going back into Pink Flamingos and everything else. Why does it take place in Baltimore? Because there are stories that you can tell there. The streets are made for this. From the brownstones, you want to talk about people feeling caged in. You go into the residential regions of Baltimore, and the brownstones kind of feel like you're in like really claustrophobic canyons, because they're only like 3 stories tall on either side of you, but the streets are fairly narrow because those parts of town were built back in the horse and buggy days. So the streets are narrow and usually one way now, which makes it even more of a maze when you're trying to get through, because you have to remember which is the one way that you can one way through. One way that you can one way through to get to the place that you're wanting to get to. There's so much confusion that can be built into all of that. So Baltimore works. Baltimore.
I have a story where I wanted to explore the creature, the Redcaps in Scotland, as an antagonist creature. And so I did research on Redcaps and their mythology. They're usually like guarding castle type, like in the basements of castles and stuff like that. So I was going through the maps of Scotland, and I want it to be where there's like no cell reception, and so that they can't call for help because they get dumped there by a friend who they betrayed. And so they get dumped. So it has to be somewhere where a road gets them out there so they can get dumped there. There needs to be castles that are abandoned, and there needs to be like no cell reception out there. So I was doing like triage, like, where in Scotland can I put this? So that was really fun. So I found like a real moor, a real lock, a real road. Like, okay, we're doing this. So that was really fun.
And to bring this alive, you have to add it into its time period.
Yes.
And this is what you're bringing up right here. So cell phones exist. Why in horror movies do people not just pull out their cell phones and call people? I actually like that. Well, I'm not saying it was a good movie or anything like that. The most recent Halloween Kills, because they bring this up. They do call the cops. The cops show up, and Immortal Monster Man, who goes / just kills them all. It's like, yeah, you can call the cops, but Immortal Monster Man do //. That's his job. He shows up, things die. You can shoot him all you want to. It's fine. He's Immortal Monster Man. You think your bullets are going to stop him? He might get winded a little bit. He might have to take a breath. But...
breath? Whoa!
He's still going to come after you and stab you and cut you into little pieces. But they remembered to include it in there. So you're not asking, well, why didn't they just call the cops? They did. It failed. It was bad. It served no purpose. It helped no one.
So I also needed them to not have a pocket Wi-Fi on them to use out there. Like, okay, they're from England, a city, and they get dumped in a truck or in a the carriage, the boot. What is the boot?
The boot.
The boot of the car. The trunk. That's the stupid word. Okay, so they're put in the trunk of the car and driven out to the boonies in Scotland. So that's why they don't have a pocket Wi-Fi, because they didn't think they were going out to the boonies. So, yeah.
Sorry, I had to turn my camera off because I felt weird being the only person with a camera on in the top row. But yeah, this is important. Okay, so I belabored this a lot in turning a place into a setting, but you really need to understand the time period in which your story is happening and inflect that somehow into your story. How does it work? How does it matter? Why does it matter? If I were to set a story here, there are a lot of things that I would have to take into effect. Because, well, any of my magical creatures would probably be welcome on the south side of town because people are a lot more witchy on that side of town than they are elsewhere or out by Beaver Dam. But I would also have to know the name of Beaver Dam because it's not on any of the maps anymore, because we don't talk about the regions around here anymore. We just talk about the town that we live in. We don't talk about Cedar Hills or Beaver Dam or any of the other colloquial places that us old timers whose families have been here forever still use, because those were the original town names before they incorporated into the one town that we have now, right? So starting to know that and understand that there were cultures in each of those places. Like my family basically owned Beaver Dam because so many of them lived out there that's basically where, if I wanted to go visit family, that's where we went. We went out to that side of town and they were everywhere. Like you could not throw a rock without hitting one of my cousins. You just couldn't. Still can't. No, you still can't. Like it's nothing but cousins out there. It's creepy. It is it is just a weird place. It was an odd place to go to school to as well, because like every time I was like, oh, I made a new friend today, and mom would be like, oh, that's your cousin. Another one? I also met this other person. Oh, that's your other cousin. How many cousins do I have?
Just don't date anyone.
Would you like to know a funny story that my dad told me from when he first moved back to the
Yes.
town? So my dad lived with his mom until he went to jail, and then when he got out of jail, he was in his 20s. My dad spent his 21st birthday in jail. But in his early 20s, he moved back up to Michigan, to about this area. And he got to re-meet his dad. And so my grandpa took my dad to a bar. And my dad was like, she's cute. And my grandpa was like, that's your cousin. She's cute. That's also your cousin. That's also your cousin. That's 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 your cousin. What about, is anyone here not my cousin? Her.
So relatable.
And my dad was like, can we belong to a different family?
Brian didn't believe that it was that bad when we first moved here, and he started hiring people for the restaurant. And I would sit down with them and talk for like 5 minutes and walk back over and be like, so do you really want to hire one of my cousins? And he's like, there's no way. Like that name is not in your family. I was like, yeah, but we got to talking and I realized that her great grandmother is my grandmother. Her grandmother is my grandmother's sister. So she's going to realize we're family at some point, because you can't help but realize that small towns, it's a thing. And like, no sooner did she go home from the interview than her mother came into the restaurant and was like, so you're one of our lost cousins. Because her mother figured it out because she had a conversation with her. How did the interview go? And her mom was like, wait a minute, you were talking to who? Oh, wait a minute. And just like put it all together in her head too. And came down and we started talking about how that side of the family's been for a while, because it's been a while since we reconnected. Because that's how things are here. And that kind of cultural stuff is really important to understand when talking about certain regions of the country. Now,
So, in my hometown or the couple surrounding counties, I can probably talk to anyone who is 10 to 15 years younger than my dad to 90 years old.
hello
And
again, Joe.
say, I'm so and so's. Like, say my dad, I'm blank's daughter, or I'm blank's granddaughter, and they'll be like, how's your grandpa? Or they'll be like, oh, you're Kathleen. You were a baby. And then sometimes they try to touch my face, and I'm like, don't touch me.
The
Because I want to
first,
just be like, it's weird.
when we first moved here, the first time we went to Walmart, we're just walking through Walmart. Just walking through, we need to pick up some stuff. Just walking through Walmart. Random stranger just walks up to me, looks me up and down, and says in the thickest local accent I've heard in a while, "You're in Montgomery, ain't you?" Now, I don't know how to take this because the Montgomerys have had feuds with a lot of families around here, so I don't know if this is like prepare to fight. Like, this is the intro to a Mortal Kombat sequence that's about to break down, or what's going on. I'm not sure yet. And I'm like, yeah, related to Doc. Ah, we're B-dolls. And that's all he had to say. I knew everything about his family. He knew everything about my family. We went over to the McDonald's that they had there and sat down and just talked about how everybody was doing for a really long time, because that's what it is. I am not a Montgomery. I am a Montgomery 3 generations back. 3 generations. My great grandfather was a Montgomery.
You're a Montgomery. Just as
And he
I am
put-
a Wagner.
But he could see the Montgomery features in my face and just walked up to me, complete rando from nowhere. You Montgomery, ain't you? Yeah. And that's how these towns are. So when you're doing your research for places, remember, realism is the worst thing that you can put into your fiction. It really is. Nobody cares what people did in the morning. Nobody cares how they brush their teeth, unless it's somehow germane to your story. The mundane things of life don't matter. You are creating hyper-realism. You are creating verisimilitude. We have a lot of words for this thing that we're creating that actually work better than realism, because nobody wants a realistic character, because they're just going to die in every action story, because bombs shred people into little bitty pieces. There are no real life action heroes. That's not how any of that works. And crime solving is boring. I know some actual police detectives who have solved actual crimes. Real crime solving is boring. It's months and months of waiting for things to get processed and things to get done, and filling out forms and going and talking to people. Some people are useful, some people are not. Filtering through real crime solving is boring. What you're trying to do is construct a world that is interesting, that is the most interesting thing that has ever happened to these characters in their life, which is why you're telling the story about them. So when you're doing that and you're looking at your setting and you're doing all of this research, I do not still have it in here. I brought it back the other day. It's one of the resources that I actually brought up on Glory's channel last week. You make a crucible. 2 things that are being held together and pulled apart by the same thing. What is it? What is the tension? What is the thing about this location that makes it matter? And you can see this in most great settings. So I'm going to do some that are really easy to see right now so you understand what I'm saying, right? Downton Abbey is set, surprisingly enough, at Downton Abbey. I know, shocker. Downton Abbey plays such an important part in the story for several reasons. One, it's Highclere Castle, which I have been obsessed with like my entire life because I'm really into Egypt, and like Lord Carnarvon, who paid for all of Howard Carter's excavations and found King Tut, lived there, and like he stole all the mummies and stuff, and they were like all throughout the house. Like it was so much pillaging, like modern day Viking stuff. I've been obsessed with Highclere Castle my entire life, which is honestly why I started watching the show. Is I saw Highclere Castle and went, I here. Yes, tell me more. Most people need more of a hook than that. But anywho, in the show, most of the plots or the subplots or have somewhere in the radiation in the background the entail on the estate. His father, Lord Grantham's father, entailed the estate so that it could not pass to any of the female heirs. So if his son died, it couldn't his American wife couldn't take the family estate.
The audacity.
Oops. He only has daughters.
Justice.
But this is the tension. So everyone has grown up here. Everybody loves this estate. Everybody feels this connection to it and the tenants that they have working the land there. But they're pulled together because how are we going to save the estate? Because, well, we found a way for basically one of us to marry her third cousin, which is not totally creepy. It's fine. It's definitely legal so that we can keep it in the family and one of the family members can still live here. Yay, we figured it out. Oh crap, why did they go sailing on the Titanic? Why was that a thing? This bad. Well, now we lost our man heir. Crap. So now it's going to go to some rando that we don't know. Thus, entire plot of the show is based around this one conceit of how are we going to keep this land that we literally, legitimately will have no right to once our parents are dead. It's a simple conceit. You see it a lot in this kind of fiction, where how do we save the estate? How do we save the house? How do it exists in a lot of ways. But you can see how this makes the story pull together and gives this setting meaning and purpose. Why is everybody talking about the estate? Why does it have to happen here? Because all of the will they won't these days of the romantic relationships, does she want to marry him because she loves him or because he's technically the heir and she wants to keep the house, damn it? So he doesn't know if she really loves him. She questions, do I actually love him? Because I do kind of not want to move out of this house. But I think I kind of like it forms the basic tension through all of the plot lines of the show and thus makes the setting feel so much more alive. We then get extra layers added to this when the new heir and his mother move in and the First World War happens and it gets turned into a hospital to deal with soldiers coming back from the front. And now we have a new tension where the new heir's mother happens to have kind of trained as a nurse. She worked at her husband was a doctor. She assisted him. She thinks she's a nurse. And the actual Lady Grantham, who actually owns the estate, are now quibbling over who actually can tell people what to do and where to go and who's actually in charge. See, a new tension. Here's our two people, same place. This is what's both holding them together and pushing them apart. Crucibles are one of the most beautiful things to put into your stories because they're easy to understand. You can have multiple competing ones. If you're really clever about how you put them together, you can you can add more than just the two people that are being pulled together. But they give the locations meaning. They give the artifacts in the story meaning. If you're not adding these layers in to give some kind of context to everything that's going on there, think about, okay, my brain just blanked. What is it? Sherlock Holmes' home address.
Oh,
221B Baker Street.
Thank you.
yeah, that's it.
This place feels alive for multiple reasons. One, the tension between them and their landlady, who both simultaneously loves Sherlock and just dotes on him without end. And also is like, you're a dirty dope fiend and you need to get out of my house. And there's an interesting tension inside one character. Like, it's all isolated inside one character who will show up periodically and be like, so, Mr. Holmes. But it adds this interesting flavor there. It adds this interesting this interesting something to the story that gives the setting more flavor. It's not just a house. We say this a lot as a weird aphorism. It's more than a house, it's a home. Okay, so how do you do that in your fiction? How do you make this home your fiction? And while I don't like going to She Who Shall Not Be Named, this is one of the things she did really well. This is one of the things that she was so good about. Because if I asked anyone here to tell me about the Hollows, or I'm sorry, the Burrow. I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. Tell me about the Burrow, or tell me about the Room of Requirement. Tell me about Gryffindor Tower. For those of you who have read the books, if I said, tell me about Ravenclaw Tower, you could probably go into a lot of detail about that too. Tell me about the Slytherin dungeons.
Why not the Hufflepuff area? Isn't it next to the kitchen so they
Yep,
could
it's
just
right across from
snack
the
all the
kitchens.
time?
Yep. It's
Bring
the only thing you
cupcakes
do
That's the
back.
one house area that they don't go into. We visit all of the other ones,
Yep.
never
Not the
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuffs.
I never realized that.
Yeah, Privet Drive. You could probably, from
Under
memory,
the closet.
you
Under
could
the
probably,
stairs.
from memory,
Yeah, under the
Floor
stairs,
plan.
not under the closet.
it's the closet under the stairs. Right, we got what you were saying. But from memory, you could probably draw a map of the Privet Drive. Just from memory. Because everything mattered. The windows mattered. Why? Because that's where his aunt would stand to be tending her plants, but also listening to everything that the neighbors are doing. But she's really just watering the plants on the windowsill. Nothing untoward happening here. It's fine. Oh, what did they say? What are they talking about?
And
She-
also the windows could open so Harry could bang his head on it when listening it on the news. Is he back?
These little details matter. These little details give a sense of place so strongly that, like I said, no matter how you feel about her as a writer, you know this location inside and out. And Privet Drive is the most mundane of mundane locations you could ever write into a story. Like, the only magical things that really happen there are in, like, book 7. And it's because Harry's leaving. Right? With the exception of the house elf incident. But, yes, Mrs. Hudson is a great character. Yeah. Yep. And think about it, though. You know this place. You can describe it because it's not just a series of facts. This is where we get our settings wrong, is that we make them a series of facts. It's a place, it's here, it's on the street, it has roses outside. You're giving a list. Lists aren't memorable. What is memorable is stories. If you've ever read The Blue Diary by Alice Hoffman, and I asked you what color the roses are outside the front door, pretty sure you would know. And I'm not saying this is a test because I don't expect other people to have read this book, but there's so much made of why she planted these roses and what they mean about her relationship with her husband. That they were done for a reason. And when he disappears, she goes out there and just looks at the roses. She contemplates just tearing the rose bushes out of the ground at one point because they just remind her of him.
In one of my stories, The Boy in the Wallpaper, that's coming out in July. This old man in Victorian England, in London, is bedridden. He's stuck in bed in the attic nursery because his kids don't want him to infect their children with his nonsense. And so he's totally isolated. There is a window, but it's so covered in soot and grime, the only way he can see out is where a pigeon had slammed into it and swiped away the grime in a little streak. So there's a little story, and it affects his feeling of isolation. Like, yes, there's a window, but there's a little patch of light, but as the light rises up the wall and disappears, so does his life. So it's like a parallel, and there's a little story, and it adds to the feeling of isolation. So you can really do a lot with setting, even if it's just a window.
And yes, there's the blowing up of Aunt Marge. But for the most part, the things that you remember in that setting are the mundane things. Which floorboards can be removed and why? Where are they? Like, again, it's one of those things you can draw it in your mind. You can draw it. And this is exactly what Laura was talking about. That little bit of story puts us in the time place. Because depending on where you are, pigeons were introduced in certain places in certain times. I remember when I was a kid, the apartment complexes that we lived in did not have pigeons around them. I remember when the pigeons found our town. I remember this weird day of, oh, look, there's a couple birds over there. And then a couple months later, wow, there are a lot of birds everywhere. And then after that, it was like, damn, pigeons. Why? Because they weren't a regular thing. And that wasn't because we probably didn't have pigeons before then, but I live not too far from Fort Detrick, and they decided that the best way to keep things sanitary was just to kill off most of the bugs. So they drove trucks around just spraying poisons everywhere. And we had no mosquitoes. There were no ticks. There were no fleas. There were no chiggers. Like, you could go through the woods and never have to worry about an insect or a snake or really any wildlife whatsoever, because Fort Detrick pretty much eradicated all of that.
Oh, wow.
So it was a safe place to grow up for the most part, right? So when this little bit of wildlife started showing back up, it was like, birds. You don't think about it too much. I had lived other places where there were birds. I never lived anywhere where there were pigeons before. I learned a lot about pigeon behavior over the years that followed.
I grew up with seagulls. Flocks and flocks of seagulls over our high school lunch area.
Same at my high school. They used to like dive bomb us for our food, and we'd have to run with our things over our heads so they didn't like poop on our heads. It was a very not fun experience.
Everything okay?
Oh, I have someone here at the house. They're fixing my sink, so I have to be masked up.
I just wanted to. I was curious and a little concerned. I was like, and suddenly we have a mask. Is everything okay? Did something happen that I should know about? Mama,
Yeah,
words.
just a visitor.
All right, but hopefully you're understanding what I'm talking about here, because it doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Think about that example that Laura gave that was so perfect, that everything was grimy except for this one place where where a pigeon slammed into the wall and wiped the grime off. That's a beautiful description. That tells you so much about the setting, the location, and it's memorable. It's something that'll stick in your mind. If you're just giving lists about people, it's not going to help you out. And to the men who are listening, I was AMAB. I let me talk to you for a minute. Get a female reader to read your stuff before you ever show it to anybody else. Thank you. Because when you're giving backstory to things, gentlemen, chests do not require backstory. There may be a reason that you feel that this needs to be in your story. You are probably wrong.
They're also not emotion detectors.
They are not emotion detectors.
And they don't really move on their own either.
There's so much here. Like, I don't want to go into a whole bad women's anatomy thing, but I feel like if
a whole topic in itself.
I feel like if I don't say this right here, then somebody's going to, at some point in my life, come back to, well, you said everything should have a backstory, which is why I went on about her breasts at length. No. Breasts do not require a backstory most of the time. Boobs are not boobly. Oh my goodness. You win. You win. I'm fine. I'll be back in a second.
sometimes you can have backstory for certain descriptions of characters, like interesting scars.
Yes.
But yeah, basic anatomy, not really necessary.
Characters talking about their boob job.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
could bring it up.
Which could be an important thing. I have read some really interesting stories lately that the way that they tell you that the main character is a trans man is mentioning the scars on their chest. Because, and it's a very subtle thing. Like, if you don't know what a breast reduction scar looks like, you might not even realize that that's what they're describing. But if you understand, you immediately get, oh, these two lateral lines that frame their pectoral muscles. These two scars that just happen to be right here. And, oh, got it. And it's a subtle thing. It goes over very quickly. We get it. Those who need to know, it's fine. I've resurrected a character where he rubs a scar. Yes. Choices should have a backstory, not anatomy. Right. Okay. And other thing. Wonderful people who are writing slice of life fiction. One, I love a lot of this. One of the things that I'm really wanting to write is basically slice of life epic fantasy. Just because I think it would be amazingly fun and kind of hilarious to write slice of life fiction that takes place in a world where, like, I don't know, dragons are having wars with each other, like, in the background, and you're just going about your day. I think that would be hilariously fun, and I kind of want to do it. I've read some. I really enjoy it. It's wonderful. But
You could do a story from the point of view of a blacksmith where the dragon slayers keep coming back with broken swords. My handiwork! So he has to go on quest to find more and more stronger material.
I can't remember what it was called, but there was a really funny sitcom that was on for like 5 episodes because nobody watched it. That was basically set in the DC universe, but it was just the people who lived there in town.
Vanessa Hudgens in it?
Yes,
Powerless?
maybe. I can't remember the name of it, but it was hilarious because they were just like going about their day, just the normal thing.
Powerless.
Yeah, just okay. Everybody, get over to the corner now. They're about to come through. What do you mean they're about to come through? Just duck. Whoa! And then you just like see the superhero and supervillain fly over. Like, do they do this a lot? Yeah, it's a thing. And it cracked me up. I don't know why. I like this kind of thing. But even if you're writing the most basic of slice of life fiction, there is a reason your character is doing the things that they're doing. If we're not getting to understand your character and understand your setting, you don't have a story. And I feel like one of the things that keeps me away from a lot of this kind of fiction is it turns into disaster porn, which I am not a fan of. I am, oh, here, let me watch somebody die slowly just to see how their suffering made them a better person. That's bullshit. Suffering does not make you a better person. It's suffering. It's just there. Like, you could choose to be a better person in spite of it. Yay. But I've read so many books that, like, they were really shit, and then cancer. Cancer made them such a better person. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It really didn't. Maybe facing their mortality made them question how they wanted to be remembered, and they wanted to have a legacy that wasn't everyone in the world hating them or immediately forgetting that they existed. But it wasn't the cancer that made them better. There's another issue there. There's another story there that should be told, that could be told, that would be much more interesting. I'm not just here to hero worship somebody's valiant suffering for the sake of them suffering valiantly. It's a weird genre that, one, when it includes types of chronic pain that I have, never really describes the experience of it in a way that makes me think that they talk to anybody who has like chronic back pain or issues walking.
Ooh, my favorite book that has it's about a woman who has chronic fatigue syndrome, and it describes the pain that she experienced. It's actually written by an author who has CFS, and the way he described the pain and the way she lives her life because of the pain, it was really powerful for me as someone who's never seen someone like me in a piece of fiction with a chronic illness like that. And just the world building, I think, around that illness and how she lives her life because of it was so well done. The story's called Storywalker. It's by David Bridger, in case anyone's interested in reading it. Highly, 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 highly recommend. So good. My favorite book. I really want to get a tattoo of it. Like, that's how good of a book it is. But yes.
I think that like chronic pain is similar to fear, like phobias that characters have, where it shouldn't show up as this would be a cool moment to have them suffer for a little bit. Let's insert it here, and then it never affects the rest of the story.
Exactly.
It should be constantly affecting the characters' decisions and who they interact with, when they go out, the mode of transportation. It should be affecting all these aspects of their life and not be oh no, the villain made it exacerbated for one scene and it never shows up again. So...
And you shouldn't have it like disappear at a convenient time.
In a walk,
Right.
What
like I did today.
So, like, on what Laura was saying, like yesterday and Monday, I had this weird anxiety all day. I couldn't figure out what it was. Something felt off, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I was talking to Glory, and she was asking so how are you doing? How's this? How's the other thing? And I realized my back wasn't hurting. That's why I was anxious all day. I did not realize that my back wasn't hurting because my mind substituted this anxiety because, the back pain's going to come back. It's going to eventually come back. And so I didn't even notice that my back wasn't hurting until she asked how my back was. And then the moment I realized, oh, my back's not hurting. Wait, is that why I'm anxious? The anxiety went away. And I'm like, dirty mind. Dirty Trixie Hobbitses. What are you doing here? And it was all unconscious. It wasn't like, oh no, my back isn't hurting, but soon it will be. Woe is me. Let me, no. I didn't even know why I was anxious. It's just my mind went, there are signals that are not here. Why are the signals gone? What is not happening? Something is not happening. And all day I felt like I was forgetting something. And apparently the thing I was forgetting to do was suffer. I was forgetting to have the pain because I actually found a way to sleep that let the muscles in my back actually relax. Oopsie.
Yeah, when you're in pain so long, you can't remember what it feels like to not be in pain. It's like,
Yeah,
11 years. I'm on 11 years now.
I was talking to Brian about that the
As
other
of
day.
tomorrow.
Because we were talking about I forgot what we were even talking about, but I was just like, I don't know what it would feel like if I actually found something that made my legs stop hurting. I don't know what that would even be like anymore. Like, would I even be me anymore? Like, I just don't. Like, my knee has been such a insistent problem for so many years.
You are not your suffering. You are you. Like, sure, it helps you think of things differently, but that won't go away. All your character development.
And so, but this is the thing. Like, anytime you're adding the one thing to your story, please don't. I just want to can we just apply a new rule here? Don't add the one thing. And by that, I mean, so this character needs this book needs some spice. It needs something just a little spicy. Cancer.
Oh, I hate that.
Or some chronic illness. Somebody will suddenly be diagnosed with a chronic illness.
Or just rapid onset of depression. Like, I hate that one. That one gets me all the time.
Don't do the one thing. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine who didn't realize that they were doing an accidental oopsie homophobia when they were like, I was just working on the story and it was like really dull. And then I realized, but what if the main character were gay? And I went, okay. And then it could be about how everybody treats them badly because they're gay and how it's hard for them to get dates because how do you find other gay people? I'm just like, no. I love you, my sweet cis ally friend. But no. No. Nobody wants this story. Nobody wants this story. Nobody wants you Brokeback Mountain. Nobody wants this. I know it's going to win awards because other straight people are going to be like, oh, the bravery. They admitted that they were gay to each other and had an abusive relationship. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Did you not see all the trauma they put each other through because they were terrible people who should never been together in the first place, but because of societal homophobia, they decided to have sex on a mountain. Oh, it's so beautiful. No, it's not. It's not beautiful at all. They're lonely people that were pushed together by circumstance, and you're trying to make them into heroes. Stop. Just stop. No. Finger waggles for all of that. It's not going to make the story better. It's really not going to make the story better to add the one thing. Because you have to start asking yourself, how is this going to be inflected into the story? It's not going to make the story better by having, and they're black now. And okay. Because I've talked to a friend about that once too. And this affects the story. How? Well, see, now I can add it. Wait, you're going to add in what? A lot of stereotypes. You realize all the things you're saying you're wanting to add in are stereotypes. Oh no. I didn't realize that. Oh, be careful. Be careful, because I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why this is more prevalent in contemporary fiction than in other genres. And it's because you need to have something to make the story about. And queer people are not the drama. They're just not. It's something else. It's almost always something else. I know for a fact, one of the schools that I went to that I suffered the most homophobia at was a closeted self-hating principal who was abusing some of the students and kind of didn't want people feeling okay talking about their sexuality because he didn't want to be outed. See, there was a completely different story there, and not just, isn't it so valiant of them to suffer under this? No, there were other things were happening. And the same thing with those diagnosis stories. If cancer hits a family and that's the source of all the drama in your story, you're probably actually telling a poverty story about people having to struggle to pay the bills, and that's the real story that you're wanting to tell, or how broken the medical system is, and that's the real story that you're wanting to tell, or how family is sometimes just the worst and starts coming in like vultures trying to figure out how they're going to divide the estate while the person's still alive and sitting there in the room, and they're talking about them already like they're dead. And then it's a family drama story that happens to have cancer in it. All of these one-issue stories show the lack of world building that I was wanting to talk about today. And trying to construct a way to actually have this discussion has been very difficult, because most of the things that we would be talking about are how you do world building for everything else, right? How do you construct a setting? How do you make a place? How do you write a character? And we can talk about that. If you have any specific questions, do put them in chat. But I
have
feel like
one.
it's
Not a
very
question.
helpful to go through some of the places that these contemporary genres really get it wrong and show how proper world building would fix it. So what is the question?
Well, it's not a question, but a little thing that I do to help me with setting in the real world is, of course, I do the Google Map, but then I YouTube video search a tour of the area. And then you actually get to go off the beaten path. You get to go through the tunnels on the inner tube, through the underground like rivers and stuff, and it's so cool. And you get to hear the atmosphere in these caves, and it's so helpful for world building. Just YouTube tours of wherever you're trying to do it.
That's
and the
a
nice
really
thing
good-
is, like, I'm writing a story that takes place both in the modern world and in the past, and they have videos of just people driving in their car around the LA area from like 1965. So then I can get a good idea of like what it was like back then and make the story more realistic, because you see like, oh, so those are the kind of cars people are driving. That's the kind of like sign that was hanging up on the billboard back then. You know, this is the kind of stuff they were advertising. This is what was their reality, which gives you such a unique insight into the setting that you're trying to create.
And especially if you're in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, every car had a backstory. Like, people wanted certain kinds of cars because it meant this thing about you. Like, you were one of the cool people because you had this car rather than that car. But what car it was changed depending on which social class you were in and what subculture you were interacting in. And all of that is readily available out there to find. And one, people love fascinating tidbits. People really, really, really do. This is how you put these backstories into your story, is that they wanted that car with the particular fins on the back of it because blah, 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 right? Or, like, I wrote into one of my stories once that took place in the 70s, a real thing that happened to my sister where she was so excited. Mom and Dad were going to buy her a car for her 16th birthday. And she got a metallic puke green Charger because that's the car they could afford. And on so many levels, this was the worst thing to give to a 16-year-old in the middle of Tennessee as their first car, because there is no being cool in a Charger. Like, Chargers were like, I don't even know what to call them today, the Honda Accord of cars. Like, they were like, there's no status. There's like negative status points attached to having a Charger. But on top of that, the color, like, it was kind of nauseating because like somebody looked at like olive green and went, you know what would make this better? If it were metallic.
That is
Because-
something I miss, is the amount of car colors that were available. Like, nowadays it's like white, black, gray. And it's like, give me a purple car.
Champagne.
I want a purple car.
Mine is probably the most flamboyant color I've ever had in a car, because I've always had like tan and white and stuff like that. My current car is Mars orange. It's like a orangish red. It's actually pretty cool, but
I
that's
believe
like
our-
the most flamboyant. Yeah, according to Kia, it's Mars orange.
I believe our car is technically electric blue. I think is the technical name of it. We got rear-ended and they had to repaint the back of it when they did the repairs, and I think that was the color that they wrote down on there.
My car is the color of my feet.
That is okay, take note of what Laura just did. That is good storytelling right there. Because an image immediately came into my mind. Because I'm somebody who is repulsed by feet, I immediately went, and then I realized, oh, it's a joke. It's fine. Because I instantly imagined a foot-colored car and had a moment of just sheer repulsion. Because, oh dear God, why? Why? Ah! It's a joke. And I went on a journey. I went on a whole journey based off of one sentence. Good storytelling. Very good storytelling right there. See, Spence says one of the few things I know I'm changing about modernist bibliomancy is giving / letting one of your main characters be deaf, and you are very pleased for you're not feeling called out by this conversation. And if you're doing this right or well, I don't know what the correct term is there. If you're doing this well, I'll say well, you shouldn't feel called out, because if it you're probably not doing it as the one thing about them. And I chose that language because I feel like we all know the movie that has that character with the one thing. Like in every parody movie, they include that character because it's easy for them to just show up and go, I'm deaf. I'm deaf. Because you know that character because they put them in so many movies that you're just like, oh, you're calling out all of these other movies because, haha. Yeah, we've all seen that character.
And
if
then
you're
there's Toph.
And then there's Toph. Oh my god, there's Toph. Because yeah, I in one of my works in progress, there is a blind character, and I'm really struggling with how I want to portray his blindness, because he's literally inspired by the prophet Tiresias from Greek mythology. So it's not normal blindness, it's a magical, oops, I saw a thing I shouldn't have seen blindness. And that's one of the reasons that's still a work in progress and not a story that I've started talking about a lot, as in we'll see the light of day soon. Because trying to figure out a way to make that story beat work and not have it be insensitive to anybody I do not intend to be insensitive towards. Because I don't want to make blindness seem like a magical superpower. I don't want it to seem like, oh, woe is me, I now have this horrible thing that is, finding the right balance with the character has been tricksy, because he also a mage, which is how he saw the thing that he shouldn't have seen. Which really complicates everything, because magic blind disabilities in fantasy settings could be an entire episode of this that we may do in the future.
Ooh, I will definitely be there for that.
Because it's
just don't
tricky.
have the disability magically healed at the end.
Yes. You don't need to be cured from your chronic health problem. I mean, that's most chronic health problems are going to be there forever, and you just learn to live with it and make it becomes a part of you in a sense. And I forgot where I was going after that, but yeah.
Well, see, like the prophet Tiresias, the curse that he basically got was he cannot see the present, but he can see the future, which causes all kinds of issues, because he's often seeing things that will happen minutes to years before they happen. He by the time we meet him in the story, he has learned the difference, and I'm thinking of maybe not having that be the case and show him having to figure that out. One of the reasons why I don't know how this work in progress is going to shape out, because it's really tricksy for him to do things, because he often will react to things that aren't there because they haven't happened yet. And may not ever actually happen. Me? Future timey-wimey. But yeah,
isn't there a planet in Dragon Ball Z where they can all see the future? Or is that just abridged? So confused.
I believe so. It's been such a long time since I watched Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, he's got a shirt on now.
I'm trying to be better, y'all. I'm trying to be better.
You can be better, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Anna's
Oh. Anna's trash service. That's cute. My
That's
garbage
so cute.
truck.
That is so cute. So yeah, please stop with the one thing stories. I know that they are popular, especially when something comes into the popular zeitgeist to do the one thing story. This is why, like, when people finally decided to admit that AIDS was a thing, we got 1,000 movies and books and musicals that were just the AIDS. And yeah, but there were so many other things going on. Like, it's the difference between watching a movie like Philadelphia, which is a one thing movie. I'm not saying Tom Hanks doesn't act his heart out in that movie, but it's a one thing movie. He's a character that has one defining trait. He has the AIDS. And watching a movie like The Normal Heart, which is based on the play by the same name, which shows what people were actually going through and how communities were having to cope with a government that thought it wasn't bad that they were all dying.
I mean, especially when you're dealing with like disability or like a one issue problem, there's usually systemic things going on that affect the person that you're talking about. You, I just lost my train of thought. Oh well.
Because this is the issue that we see a lot right now with, trans visibility becoming more of a thing. And so we are getting a lot of characters that the one thing about them that is that they are trans or that they are non-binary. Oh my goodness. Do we need any more non-binary assistants in TV shows? Like, why are they always assistants? Why are all assistants non-binary now? I don't understand this. This is a weird trope that has happened. And the only thing that I know about, I know two things about them, I guess. They are non-binary and they're someone's assistant. Oh my. Why is this a thing?
Do you think this is a problem of just having flat characters?
It is. And it's also because if something is new to you, it's exciting. If you don't know a lot about something, you may find it fascinating, right? And fascination is one of the things that drives us to tell stories. I don't fault the people who wrote Philadelphia, for example, or who made the movie Philadelphia. Because a lot of people didn't know about HIV. They didn't know how it worked. They didn't know how people were discriminated against because of it. They didn't know any of the things. So that was fascinating to them. They basically crystallized that fascination into a movie starring Tom Hanks and made movie. And it's just basically show and tell for adults, which is not what a story should be.
Yeah.
It's, did you know that? Here's all the research that I found out about cancer. The story. And yes, I can understand how you got fascinated about the oncology visits and the chemotherapy and the step, right? I can understand that. That's not necessarily a story. So yes, it is flat characters, but it is confusing what is interesting to you about the subject with what would make an interesting story. In so many of the instances that I can think of that have really, I don't really want to talk about it, but Sia's
music
video movie thing that she did about autism.
Yeah.
You could see how she did become interested in the idea and topic. And through the help of some not good people, did what passed as research with nobody correcting her that she was talking to the wrong people to make this. I am not trying to, attempt. Yeah. And there aren't scare quotes big enough for the word attempt here. But yeah, that was her trying to take what little knowledge she had on a topic and make it into a story that also featured her style of music, which is overly dramatic, often melodramatic, and sometimes just weirdly dancey. And it just, one, this is why it is always good to bring in people to do sensitivity reads for everything that you're doing. Because,
And listen to them.
yeah, I feel like any sensitivity reader that would have looked at the script for this thing would have been like, no. No, these entire section here, and here, no.
I think it was more like this entire project that you have here is no, and we should rethink everything from
But
the ground up.
again, please don't think I'm trying to absolve her of the thing that she did. But you can see how what this was I got fascinated about this issue. I am going to enlighten other people about this issue and not really understanding the issue.
Hmm.
And I think
And
that's
also make it a way to promote my music.
I think that that's what a lot of these projects are, is someone got really fascinated about a topic and then didn't put in the due diligence to figure out what it actually was, did not think about how could this be worked into a story. Right? One of the most, I've had this debate with people on numerous occasions because it became kind of a fad in the 90s to do the abused woman trope in your story, because people suddenly discovered, what, you can't beat your wives? What? I think
What
that
a
should have been
twist.
obvious, but I lived through the 90s, so you all didn't have to. It was a
I
wild
was there in
time.
the 90s.
We were discovering new things, like maybe spousal abuse is bad. And one of the most interesting movies to me to tackle this topic was, of all films, the knockoff American version of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And that was Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Love Julie Newmar. Because Stockard Channing, who was, of course, famous for playing the abused woman in so many things, reprises this role in this movie. And it's not her character's defining characteristic. It's not the only thing about her character. It's actually better than the weird racist thing that happens in Priscilla that I'm just not going to go into because I don't want to say any of those words out loud and have them on recording that I said any of those words. I love Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It is a very good movie that has a whole subplot in it that is, wow, you did that. Because you can love a thing and criticize it at the same time. And I don't even, like I said, I don't even want to describe that subplot, but if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It involves ping pong balls and women. Anyway, they
I
decided
need
not
to
to
take Roy outside. He's
Alrighty.
See you soon.
Have the fun. Be safe. So instead of having that car wreck of a plot in the American version of this, they are trapped again in a small town, and they decided to include this storyline of the battered woman. And oddly enough, they actually gave Stockard Channing a character. They actually showed her husband to just be a terrible person. Like he wasn't like a good guy who also hits his wife, which I guess is bad. Because I don't know if you've seen movies from this time period. That was very often the plot. But he's such a good guy. He's so nice. I can't believe that he hits her. No, he's just terrible in every possible way. And he's cruel to everyone. And it's not even that they turned him into a stereotype. They turned him into a guy that, if you grew up in a small town, you will recognize that guy and all the things that he and his friends do in that movie. And they actually made him into a character. They made her into a character. They made all of the people in this story that had no right to be characters. And it's not just the one thing. It's not just the story of how to be a drag queen, even though that's what all the marketing was for. They have to teach John Leguizamo how to be a queen. In other words, how to grow up. There's actually a whole maturity subplot in the movie where a character has to They have plot arcs, for God's sakes. No one said that they should have plot arcs. This is a stupid, silly movie about drag queens going cross country and magically changing the lives of small town America. No one needed to have story arcs in this story. But they gave them to them anyway. It doesn't take that much effort. And it's still a silly movie. Even with this very serious subplot in there that is handled very seriously. And Patrick Swayze gets a little scary in some of those scenes where he is starting to intervene. But the other thing is, the white guy doesn't save her. She saves herself. So avoiding a lot of the tropes that were very much there at the time. I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm just saying it's amazing that this movie, of all movies, somehow didn't do all of the tropes that were there at the time that it really should have done. And I don't say should have as in like would have been good fiction, but every one of its contemporary films did, and often won awards for them because we love our tropes, people. But they found a way to tell the story and actually give them characters. And that's, I think, the least we can ask for anybody who is trying to write. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Because there were a lot of movies that decided, maybe for love, she should just put up with it. Those movies were made in the 90s, too. Maybe one day he'll change. I'll just let him keep hitting me. It'll be fine. And I really hate to put that accent on, but every movie I can think of from the 90s that had that subplot, the heroine had that voice. It'll be fine. He only hits me because he loves me. I do remember that line in at least 3 movies. And that being the moment where you're supposed to go, true love wins. True love conquers all. No, it doesn't. He's an abusive SOB. Get out of the house.
Or turn around and hit him back.
Which is actually what happens in Tu Wong Fu.
Because, my dad told me that if somebody ever lays their hands on me, they better knock me out because I'm going to not stop until they're knocked out.
In 9.5 weeks, when Kim Basinger's character walked away, critics hated that. Yeah. I remember there was an Antonio Banderas movie that came out during this time period where the plot of the movie is he was an obsessive stalker for this famous movie star. And so he kidnaps her and ties her up and he's a hero because he refuses to sexually assault her until she realizes that he is the one that truly loves her, and she finally decides to be with him.
That is
there's so much wrong with
problematic,
that.
to say the least.
This was the 90s, okay? This wasn't that long ago. When we say that cultural attitudes are changing quickly, this movie won awards. The movie I'm talking about won awards.
That's disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when you find a movie that was made in this milieu, when these are the kinds of films that were being made, and they were able to escape the tropes, they are like magic little unicorns. And show that even when the culture is wrong about everything, and trust me, it was wrong about so much back then. Little due diligence. Yeah. It's. I remember seeing a trailer for it that called it one of the sexiest movies ever made.
What? So fucked up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss.
No, it's fine. But if anything deserved
There's no
it,
other phrase for it.
yeah, if anything deserved it, it's that.
It just kind of spilled out at that point.
Yeah. But this is what I'm talking about. Understanding the culture that you live in and being able to see maybe we're the okay. I'm gonna make Carrie like go off on a side quest in just a minute, and I apologize for that, but I don't, because it'll be amazing. But OSP did a video recently on the trope of "Are we the bad guys? Are we the baddies?" And I kind of feel like that's all of 90s cinema, is all the writers today looking back going, wait, were we the bad guys? Yes, we were. We were the bad guys. We thought we were the good guys, but we were wrong. We were so wrong. We didn't even realize how wrong we were. And I feel like this is writers who fall into these sets of tropes are those people that will have hopefully one day realize, oh wait, am I the bad guy? Because again, nobody thinks that they're the villain, but you need to be very careful when you think you're the white knight on the charger that's coming in to save the people, because you're probably about to do either something really dumb or really harmful. And again, going back to the Sia thing that we were talking about, she thought that this was going to save the world. Like if you saw any of the pre-press or any of the stuff, or her reaction after people reacted badly to it, she was on her white horse and she was riding in what she thought was shining armor. And like, how dare you not understand? I was here to save the autistic people. I am the savior. How dare you not find me appropriate? Yeah. Anytime you think you're the hero, step back for a minute and reevaluate what you think you're doing. Because you might be. If you're writing an own voices story that you've never seen anywhere else, you might actually be the hero in that situation. Because people might need to hear that story to either feel not alone in the world, or to see somebody that from a perspective that they never understood before. That wonderful video that came out, a month or so ago, being not straight. That story has helped me and a lot of other people who thought we understood what it was like to be asaru be like, oh, these are words I can understand. I can get this. I'm not saying that I am the master of understanding what it is, because no, because I am not this thing. But her having the courage to tell that story, and you can tell from the intro where she was just like, look, y'all, I'm not here to make everything better, and I'm not answering any more questions. No more questions. This is it. This is all you get. Now let's talk. You can see that she was even a little concerned about telling that story. And I get it. That's a very personal story. That yes, she changed names and and as she said, lumped multiple stories together so that one in particular was being called out through the whole thing. But that takes some courage, and it's hard to do. And we need 1,000 of those stories for everything. For everyone who's asaru, for everyone who's demi. Every time I have a discussion with somebody about demisexuality, and they're like, that's not really a thing. Anybody who's gender fluid, dear God, write your gender fluid characters. Please. We need people to understand this, because the last person I explained gender fluidity to looked at me and with concern in their eyes said, and I quote, "That sounds like mental illness to me."
I used to be in touch with people like that.
Yikes.
Well,
I've
and
stepped
part of
away
the
from
problem
them
is
since,
it used
but-
to be considered a mental
Yeah.
illness. Asexuality used to be considered an illness.
Oh
And
no,
House-
Kat, you're ill.
Institutionalized.
House cured it on at least 3 episodes. That was the plot of at least 3 episodes I can think of.
I missed those episodes. Dang. I mean, House was a really terrible doctor. I mean, people really need to understand that. He was a horrible doctor.
He also
was not a good doctor.
He
Not
also
a good
cured the
one.
transgenderism twice.
What are these writers even doing? Like,
I'll keep trying.
But we do need those stories. We do need those stories. So if you have that story, tell it, whatever it is. Honestly, now more than ever, are you a working mom and you're telling your own stories? Do you feel like you have an own voices story that you could tell there? Because, dear God, the number of people that do not understand what stay-at-home motherhood is or working mothers are, because we love making caricatures and stereotypes of all these kinds of people.
Check out Misadventures of a Mom Author on Kindlevella and available in a book form this August.
woo!
But we need those stories. We really need those stories, because if people, I've talked to a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I'm not a part of a marginalized community," and I'm like, "You probably are, unless you are a cis white male who was born wealthy and has always been wealthy and will probably always be wealthy, because that trust fund will never run dry no matter how bad you are at spending it." But even then, you're probably left-handed or something else that makes you different from what most people expect. And that story, it needs to be out there, because one thing we need to do, especially in contemporary fiction, is eradicating the illusion of normal. Normal is a lie that we tell that just does harm. That's all it does. Because once you say something is normal, normal is default. If you are not normal, you're abnormal.
Lefties unite.
Yes. Like, my favorite chart that I have bookmarked, because every time I get into an argument with somebody about transgenders, because they don't understand that that's an adjective, not a noun. Transgender people.
It's an
Anyway.
adjective.
It's an adjective. Anyway, is they will show a chart of, look at how steep the rise in the number of people identifying as transgender is. Have you ever seen the chart for the people that identify as left-handed? You know, it looks exactly the same. You know, my dad was born left-handed, and they literally beat him in school until he stopped using his left hand and started using his right hand in the 1950s. Because there was not just a social stigma, but we forced people to stop being left-handed. Isn't it amazing that these two graphs look an awful lot alike when we stop having a social stigma against a thing?
And isn't it interesting that the numbers are lower in places where the stigma is much higher, and like much higher in places where the stigma is much lower? Like,
Isn't it
that's a
amazing?
It's
curious
amazing
fact
how
to
people
me.
are comfortable coming out when they are not in fear of their lives.
Amazing, isn't it? It's strange. So I don't want to discourage people from telling their stories. That's why I kind of went on this long tangent, because you may feel like you're writing that the one thing story if you have any of the things we've been talking about before. If you're from a ethnic minority, if you're from a gender, if you're from any gender that is not cis male, if you are have any chronic illness or any, life-threatening illness, you may think that I'm saying that you can't write those stories. I'm not. What I'm saying is, we who have chronic illnesses or are of a sexual minority or a gender minority or what have you, understand that's not the real story. That's part of the story. And it's all tied together. And I'm going to say the word just so I know every right-winger will leave the stream. That's why intersectionality is important, because it is one of the many things that make the story important and interesting, not the only thing. Because honest to God, if you wrote a story that the only point of the story was, well, I guess I can't do that because I'm left-handed, maybe you could make a comedy, maybe, but it would be boring. Maybe. there's more going on there. There's more there.
Mhm.
No one was born lefty and was forced to stop being left-handed. Yep. He was legit 2 years older than me. Yeah. I remember kids being bullied for being left-handed when I was in school. And I mean, they were bullied worse for being left-handed than I was for being openly gay.
That is bizarre.
Wow.
Why are people like this? Ugh.
Because when you say something is normal, it becomes default. If you are not part of the default, then you must have a problem. That's why I'm very, like, I keep bringing this up. We need to just kill the idea of normality. There is no such thing as normal. Because the more you get to know people, there is no normal.
There is no like one thing across the line that people are like.
There's a wonderful book that I read. I believe it was
Too many
called,
variations.
I think it was called The End of Normal. And one of the stories that they tell in there is how the British government commissioned people to do a survey of British men and determine what the average British man looked like. Then at the beginning, at the wind up to World War I, they manufactured a whole bunch of uniforms for the average British male. And no one could fit in them because either their neck was too big or their torso was too long or too short, or their legs were too long or too short, or their hips were too wide. Like, normal gets rid of, averages out all of the differences. All of the differences get averaged out when you start talking about normal. And they literally made a whole bunch of uniforms that could not be used
Wow.
because no one could fit them. It was just a giant waste of money. They thought that by figuring out what the average British male looked like, they could just mass produce. Because remember, this is the beginning of mass production, right? Nobody quite knows how to do mass production yet. This is how we're going to do it. No. It's also how we found out that we in the United States were killing our citizens, because more than, I think, a third of the people that were drafted into the First World War could not go because they couldn't button the top button of the uniform because they had goiters.
Oh.
Because if you lived west of the Mississippi and slightly to the north, if you lived in the Midwest, you were not getting iodine in your diet at all.
Oh.
That's why
That's
all
no
salt
good.
is iodized now. Because basically a third of the men who showed up for the draft all had goiters and they couldn't fit into a uniform because of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Things you learn when you're not paying attention. Yeah, I'm sure. And it's
weird.
It's such a weird thing to get picked on for, because what does it matter?
Yeah,
What does it
like,
matter?
I mean, both hands are useful. Why are we favoring one hand over the other? Uh-oh, did Charlie freeze? Oh, yes. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, we are a bunch of freaking weirdos. And in fact, the clique that I ran around with in high school, we just referred to each other as the freaks. And that was because that was the one unifying thing that we had in common. We were all aberrant from what is considered normal in some way. So we all hung out together. So we had the drama kids and the kids in the photo department and the kids in the dance department, and all of the goths were over on one side and all the skaters were over on the other. But because none of those fit into the normal group, yeah, we were the freaks. And we were fine with it. And it gave us a sense of identity. And as the group grew, we realized we outnumbered the normal people, because more and more people started like hanging out with us because they realized we weren't going to judge them for stupid, arbitrary things.
Mhm.
And so more and more people started showing up to the places we hung out before school and during lunch. And then all of a sudden it was just like, huh, there's a lot more of us than there are of them, which is always the thing that you learn when you support diversity. So you're telling me the two there's people I know are going to kill themselves because they're too dumb to use power tools? Yeah, yeah. And at least it made us laugh. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh. We do some weird things. Weird things. And we have artifacts in language that I think there are interesting and valid discussions over whether or not we should get rid of. The word sinister literally means left-handed.
Interesting. Oh, because the Latin
Yeah.
word.
Yeah, you were either dexterous.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you were dexterous, which literally means right-handed, or sinister, which means left-handed.
Dexterous, sinister.
And we use those words very differently today, don't we?
Yes.
Because when I say dexterous, you think somebody who's nimble and agile and maybe even a gymnast. Not like, well, I'm right-handed.
I was just gonna say, not like me.
Not this one. Like, I remember trying to learn how to write with my left hand because I wanted to be sinister. Like, I thought that would be hilarious. It didn't work because I'm really bad with my left hand. It's also your dad made you a little scared to use power tools. Yeah, I can get that. I mean, sometimes it does, and the way handles and stuff are created, it does kind of matter because of human design choices, not because of nature.
Designers.
But yeah.
Bad at seeing the obvious sometimes.
So we've talked about how to establish setting if you're writing in the real world. We've talked about how not to write the one thing a lot, because I feel like this entire stream could just be going on and giving more examples of the one thing in literature and movies and such, but we will move on. Yep. It's interesting to read through the Urban Dictionary. It really is. So one of the other things is understanding that plot is not necessary and neither is drama. And I know that's going to sound weird to a lot of people that I'm saying that, because wasn't I just complaining about how I find a lot of contemporary fiction boring? Yes. But there are many interesting ways to make a story interesting that, one, doesn't mean people have to be yelling at each other every 5 minutes. That doesn't have to be a thing. And I am exaggerating a little bit. It's not always that bad in contemporary fiction, but a lot of it, is kind of that. So one of the things that I feel makes manga and anime as popular as it is, and I've talked about this several times before, and I think I actually did it. I meant to do it years ago. It should be somewhere back in the archive of the channel. The way that most of those stories are written is through a style that is referred to as Kishoten Ketsu, which is setup, basically setup, deepening, the reverse, and the integration. And this does not require any kind of drama. It does not require any kind of action. It does not require any of the things that in most Western stories classify as tension, but can be obscenely tense. And if you've watched any slice of life anime, you know what I'm talking about. They're just writing a letter. They're just cooking dinner. But it is the most tense cooking of dinner that you have ever experienced in your life. They're boiling the water for the tea, and you're so afraid they're going to spill it. Why are these things holding our attention in these stories? Because of the way they have done their setup and the fact that we know that they're going to throw a twist at us somewhere. So this style of writing, Kisho Ten Ketsu, is very simple. You start off where you establish this is how the world works. So let's use Spirited Away as an example for this, because it's very easy to see here as an overall plot. We meet our characters, and they're moving to another town. And she doesn't want to go to another town because she's going to miss her friends, and it's so sad. But she's got to go because her parents are going, and it's so normal. And she's such a normal kid. Like, if you've ever been on a forced long road trip with your parents, you were that kid in the back seat, just, why are we doing this? I don't want it. Like, it's so real. It's so real that if you're familiar with this genre at all, immediately your spider sense starts tingling and go, oh no, something really bad's about to happen. Something terrible. What is going to happen? So they take the wrong roads and they end up at this weird, like, dead end, and they decide to get out and look at this abandoned amusement park. And we reinforce just how mundane it is. The father comments about how popular theme parks were, and they just popped up everywhere, and nobody went to them because there were too many of them. And they're just these defunct theme parks everywhere. So we're reinforcing the rules we just learned. Everything is normal. It's so normal. It's so mundane. It's not even weird that they found a weird abandoned theme park out in the middle of nowhere, because they're literally everywhere. It's just dull. It's boring. Everything. It smells like somebody's cooking something. The first hint of something weird. They follow their way over, and they find one of the food kiosks has food there, and they get all manner of excited about it. And they wonder where the person is that runs the kiosk so that they can pay them. But they're not there. And they're hungry because they didn't pack a lunch or bring with them. So they'll just pay when the person shows up. They'll keep track of what they're eating, and they'll just pay when the person shows up because, again, it's normal, right? This is just how you would do. And then they turn into pigs. Like, literally turn into pigs.
Just the parents.
Just the parents. Because she doesn't eat any of the food. Because she just wants to go, I don't like it. Because she's still in her old state. And here's the twist. Her parents just turned into pigs. Well, this is a good payoff for what we've been set up with. We were set up with, it's just going to be a boring story about moving. Oh, her parents are pigs now. Well, and then we go into the fourth stage, which is the resolution. We have to somehow make the old world and the new world come together. And how do we do this? She escapes into the bathhouse, goes down into the bowels of the bathhouse, where she discovers what? It's just a boring job where people are just going about their boring lives, doing their boring things, even though they're weird monster creatures. So really, we didn't lie to you when we said it's just going to be a boring story about a kid going to a new place. It is. It's just they're monsters here now. It's fine. It's fine. And so we establish our new normal. Okay, so it's a boring world where people are just doing their daily chores. She goes and she gets her job. It's just a boring world where people are doing their boring chores. And then our next twist comes in. And is the next twist No Name? I'm trying to remember the order of the movie. But at any rate, you can see how the cycle just repeats throughout the story. And it keeps getting brought back in and normalized. The tension, if you're looking at this from a Western point of view, this entire story is about how is she going to save her parents? And yes, this is kind of the plot of the show. This is kind of the story that we're getting. But the real story that we're getting is she has to, in order to save her parents, realize exactly how much this magical world that she's fallen into is the mundane world that she's always lived in. And spoiler alert, ends up discovering that the cute boy that she's kind of been obsessing over this entire time is actually the river that she used to live by when she was a kid. Which brings everything full circle. And thanks to him, she's able to save everything, blah, 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 spirited away. The actual tension in the story are the twists. We keep getting set up of, well, I guess this is how things work now. Wait, what do you mean Baba has a sister? Well, I guess this is how things work now. Oh, wait, what is that giant monster thing that's coming in here trying to eat everybody now? Right? It's the
Why
twists.
are you going berserk in dragon form? What? It's being chased by paper people.
The twists are what actually make the story interesting. And once you understand how Kisho Tenketsu works, you can use this for any genre. Where you just have your setup. Very important, your reinforcement. That second beat really does matter. If we had just had the first beat where everything's fine, everything's normal, oh no, my parents are now pigs, it doesn't hit you as hard as if you have that second beat of, oh, look, it's another one of those run-down theme parks that are just everywhere because, again, everything's normal. We've reinforced it in a way that makes the twist hit harder. So when, oh crap, they turned into pigs, it's really an oh crap moment because that second beat lulls you into a false sense of security. It also allows you to set up your red herrings and everything else that you would normally do in fiction to distract people from what's actually going on. But it doesn't have to be all yelling, all screaming, all people being mad at each other for various reasons. You can tell really amazing stories just by subverting the audience's expectations. Which, guess what? You get to set up. You get to make their expectations. And then you get to pull the rug out from underneath them and be like, ha ha ha, it's actually this.
How would you do that for My Neighbor Totoro?
Uh,
Because there's no villain, there's no real plot. It's just
I feel like this is all of Totoro. All of Totoro is set up this way, where we are meeting our characters. We know that something is going on with their mother, and it is a very simple story about a family in pre-grief. Because if I remember correctly, the story starts and she's just sick at the very beginning. If I'm remembering correctly, she goes to the hospital deeper into the story. It's been a while since I've watched Totoro. Trying to make sure I have the events in
I
mind.
think she's in the hospital the whole movie.
Is she in the hospital the whole movie? I can't remember. But when we were introduced to the idea of all of the other things, the first way we're introduced to them is as these characters' imaginary friends. And the twist, the first twist that we get to is, are they really imaginary? And that really is the tension for the entire movie. Is how much is just the two kids imagining this magical world to escape from the traumas of their real life. And how much of it is there's actually this weird magical world where they're riding inside of a cat bus. And that's the tension that pulls us through. It's actually the same tension that we find in Pan's Labyrinth, in The Faun, by Guillermo del Toro. Yes, there are monsters, there's a fascist regime, there are soldiers, there's all kinds of things in the story. The actual tension of the story is how much of it is real. Which parts of it are real? And which parts of it are going to affect this world? Is she this reincarnate fairy queen? Or is that just her way of coping with this fascist regime?
Ooh, inspiration is a monster.
Oh, that is such a good picture.
Yeah, this is from the Guillermo del Toro exhibit that we had up here.
Nice.
So I got this one and the Hellboy one. But yeah. His creature design, man, just mwah.
But it's one of the things that makes both of those stories really powerful is they're not creature features. It's so hard to explain to somebody who hasn't seen Pan's Labyrinth what Pan's Labyrinth is. Because most of the people that you talk to want to think of it as a monster movie. And it is a movie with monsters in it. There are a lot of them. And that frog thing lives in my nightmares. That frog thing is my nightmare monster. Like, just no. Just no. But that's not what the story is. The story is, well, it's yes about the girl, but about the traumas that Spain went through under the fascists, and how much was them misremembering a false history to just get through it. How much of it is how much of their memory is real? How much of their experience is real? And that tension is so much more interesting than if the whole point of the movie is if she wins Frank and becomes the fairy queen, I guess Franco isn't the ruler of Spain anymore. I mean, I don't know how you turn that into like a traditional monster movie, right? Because it's so a non-traditional monster movie. But if it were a more traditional monster movie, I guess that would be the actual plot of it, right? Is I guess she becomes the fairy queen and magically unfrancos Spain. Everything's better now. And yeah, just hello, Nia. How are you doing? I hope all is well.
Poppy!
Yeah, she's very needy right now. She was sitting right underneath the desk, just staring up at me, and I was like, "You dog."
Oh,
That is true of a lot of Miyazaki movies.
ice cold. Ah.
Abandoned hotels on the East Coast. There, yeah. Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robinson is a good example. Yeah, of the real world. Yes, going wrong, because so much of that movie is it angels and demons, or is he just seeing them? Are they real? Yes, they did a very good job with that movie and living in that liminal space where you don't know. And that's one of the reasons why I think anime and manga really hit us in a way, especially as a Western audience, that is so appealing, because it is a very different tradition of storytelling to tell stories this way. And that doesn't mean that they're devoid of a rivalry subplot or any of the other things that we would talk about. It's just there's this whole other understanding. Like when a mangaka is making manga, every page is meant to have this Kisho Tenketsu on it. Every page, every issue, every bit of it, from the smallest piece all the way up to the biggest piece, is meant to have this structure to it. And by making it twists and surprises all the way down, you start training yourself to see these little twists that you can throw in here, there, and yonder that spice the story up. It's very hard, unless you're Dragon Ball, to be boring in anime, because I don't know, somebody just screaming for 3 episodes is not riveting. I'm sorry. I love Dragon Ball so much, but why all the just punch. Just punch. Please, for the love of God, just
So, Attack on Titan. I won't give away any spoilers, but there is a twist that happens, a huge reveal that like changes the course of stuff. And the line of dialogue that is the huge reveal is just a throwaway in a corner of a panel. And you turn the page and you're like, wait, what? And so in the anime, they have the 2 groups of people on the same wall, and they have the one group doing the about like that, you know, the big reveal is going to be, and then you have the other group talking about stratagem. And so it's just going back and forth and back, and they're like talking over each other, and then it cuts back to them and they're doing like the big twist reveal, and it goes back to the other people, and it goes back to this people, and you're just like, is nobody gonna react? Like, capital, what is happening? And it takes a little while, and then they have to do a flashback sequence, and then they get the response, and then you're like, response for a whole 2 episodes, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. But it's just like a throwaway line, like whatever.
And this is one of the things that's so beautiful about Chinese and Japanese storytelling, and I lump those two together because this specific idea, I'm using the Japanese name for it, but it originates in China in the 1400s and was brought over with the monks into Japan, and kind of is the seed for the storytelling traditions in both countries from there. But this idea of narrative tension, which is something that we don't play around with all that much in the West. We do sometimes. I'm not saying that we don't, but it really, yes, exactly what Laura was saying. Like, is nobody going to react to that? Like, honestly, and I'm going to bring it up because Carrie's here and we're both like obsessed with the show The Gilded Age. But some of the best moments of that show is when like a truth bomb gets dropped and then, oh, we're off to somebody else now. Wait, what? No. But what happened? What happened?
Yes!
But what? No, you can't. And that's purely narrative drama.
Okay, but in Attack on Titan, it's like the end of the season and the credits have gone, and you're like, wait, they're showing another scene, and it's like, whoop, and it's like, and then you have to wait like 4 years for the next season. And it's like,
that last episode of Gilded Age had me on edge so much. Everybody go watch it. It's only 9 episodes.
It's so good. It is so good. Oh, I love so much. But narrative tension is something that we do not pay enough attention to, that you can give a story that may not have had that much tension to it. Even if it is a big reveal, it becomes such a bigger reveal when you're like, but no, ramifications. What are the ramifications of the... Excuse me. But this is nice. This is wonderful. Oh, why is this fascinating too? Why am I interested in this too? But the thing... and you feel that tension in yourself because you're still interested in what's going on in front of you. But in the back of your mind, the whole time you're like, but over there is the... Yes. Don't stop. I mean, I didn't say stop. This is fast. But you feel that tension inside yourself, and it is so real. It is so wonderful, and I absolutely love it. My favorite season-ending twist of all time, just because it hit me at just the right age that I didn't know television could do that to me, was the reveal during one of the cliffhangers for Star Trek The Next Generation, when all of a sudden Tasha Yar with a Romulan haircut and uniform just walks out and basically says, I'm going to smack Picard down. And I'm like, what now? And now you have to wait for 4 months to find out what happened.
hey, I waited 4 years for season 2. 4 years.
Because I didn't even know a story could do that to me. Like, what? Did she die? Like, we saw her get pulled into the thing, and we saw something come out of the thing. Was that not really her that came out of the... Wait. And all summer was just the discussion of what actually happened there. And my friends and I did actually figure it out before they revealed it on the show, which made us feel very, very happy and proud. But yeah.
And then you have all the conspiracy theories that Sherlock had in between seasons. Ugh.
And if you're an evil person like Mark Gatiss, you read all of them and intentionally fly a middle finger at all the people who thought any of those things. As you disproved each and every one of them through the next season. Because Mark Gatiss is a monster for so many reasons. That's one of them. Not the only one, but definitely one of them. Yes, and Maggie brings up the movie The Cell, the normal flipped into the bizarre. That movie did not get the attention it deserved because everybody got confused because there's a weird baptism plotline in it that upset a bunch of Christian folk for reasons that don't even make sense that it would upset some Christian folk. And that's what I think a lot of people remember about that movie. If you remember a movie starring, it was Jennifer Lopez, if I'm remembering correctly, that starred in that. And do you think I'm going to sugarcoat things? I very rarely do that. No, I'm sorry. It's a weird side note. I don't understand why it became such a thing. Let's see. Yes, this is the grand joke of all of this. Yeah, unless it's Dragon Ball, because yeah, it's just going to be that. But yeah, there are other ways to make a story interesting other than like we were talking about before with the one thing. You don't have to be like, huh, my story is boring. Maybe somebody should get cancer. That's not a valid way to fix the story being boring. This is my least favorite in all of this is, oh, we're going to have one character spontaneously cheat on another character, even though we have established them as somebody who would never do this. Just because, wouldn't that be unexpected?
I
Well,
feel
yeah.
like a better way to go about trying to. What the heck?
And reality takes
Plot
over all away.
twist.
And this is the power of a good plot twist. Right there. And also, Maggie, be very careful, especially nowadays, with asking me this, because I have a lot of opinions that I've chosen not to share on the interwebs, that I might be sharing on the interwebs in the future. It was a strange, odd movie, and yeah, it was a thing. But yeah, maybe play with other ways to put tension in, because unfortunately, a lot of these stories have lost some of the power that they used to have, because it's hard to write a comedy of manners nowadays, since we apparently, as a society, have decided that civility doesn't exist anymore. Can we maybe not decide that? Can we undecide that? Anyway, but that used to be a valid genre in this vein, was to do that. The Ideal Husband, which is one of my favorite plays, for so many reasons. I loved it before, but there was a year that we were very, very, very poor, and Brian downloaded An Ideal Husband from Project Gutenberg and formatted it really pretty and printed it out for me for my Christmas present, so I would have something under the tree, because he knew I loved it so much, and I still have it. It's back in my office back there, and so it became like my favorite play for multiple reasons, because that's just so sweet. But you couldn't. It would be difficult to tell a story like that in modern day, and to prove that, watch the movie. Because a lot of the mores that are being poked fun of in that movie, we don't share anymore. That story, the world has changed, and so a lot of those jokes don't land the way that they did. Did you want to continue what you were saying before you were taken away?
Sure. They said it was a package, but they still haven't come to my door yet. Anyways, instead of giving your character the one thing that, like, I don't know, the stereotype hole that you might fall down, I think what's good is to have more than one want for your character. They should want more than one thing in life, so they can have multiple goals, so you can flesh it out. If you're an underwriter, that helps you not be as underwritten, because there's more subplots to go along with it. So finding out what they want, what they actually need, what else do they want?
And people's wants and needs change over time too, as circumstances change in their life. So,
like, sure, they might want to get into the most prestigious school ever, but they also might want to repair their relationship with a parent figure. Like, there could be more than one goal. That's all I was going to say.
Is doing a thing. I may disappear for a second to figure out why it's decided to. Everybody has been frozen on my screen for a minute. I could hear what you were saying.
Oh no.
Oh.
I'm trying to figure out what got locked up and make it stop.
Oh, that's so
Maggie
cute.
makes a great point. I think characters also need internal and external battles and not win all of them,
Yes.
for sure.
Mhm.
I use plot embryos when I do novels. So it's the hero's journey plotted out in a circle. You start with where you are. So you start with the known world, and the bottom half of the circle is the unknown world. You have your internal conflict, your external conflict. It's all complicated. But there is the normal plot embryo where you like find out what you want, what you really need, get what you really need, and return back to where you came from, or expand where you came from to include where you are now. But there's also the tragic plot embryo where you go out, you find what you want, and you find what you need, but you can't take what you need, and it's a tragedy. So multiple characters can have different plot embryos, and each subplot can have tragic or heroic plot arcs. Like, they don't have to win everything.
And this is where it's important to understand the audience that you're writing to. And like, Heartstopper is huge right now. And it is huge for several reasons. The biggest of which is it's just wholesome romance, and a lot of the other tropes that, yes, would probably make the show more realistic, that we in the queer community are just tired of because they're called our lives, are absent from this. Like, it's not that the story is devoid of homophobia or transphobia. Both are there, but they're not the main focus of the show. The main focus are these four friends and the possible fifth person that may be added to this group because one person is interested in that person, but no, that's not going to happen because they're straight. But it works because the author understood the audience. The book that this is based off of was born out of the fact that the author realized that there aren't a lot of just wholesome, cozy romances for queer people in general, not let alone queer kids. There's no place to really see yourself in a way that isn't just, and here's the suffering that society puts upon you, and here's all the darkness and the fear and all of the bad things. Like, yeah, that's called our daily lives. Like, we are familiar with these things. And so what makes that show resonate is the issues that they chose to struggle with. It's not a will they, won't they relationship. The main character literally does not understand his sexuality. And one of the two tensest scenes in the show, I won't spoil the second one, but the first one, he crawls into the corner of his room, so the back of his laptop is facing the door, and he's very careful, keeps looking up so that nobody's looking in the door, and he types into Google, "Am I gay?" Because he's trying to figure himself out. And his hand is just hovering over the enter key. Is he gonna let himself ask the question? He's like the jock at the school. He's the star player on the rugby team. He is the cisgendered straight boy that everyone loves. Does he want to know the answer to this question? Do I want to know? There's so much tension, and it's just literally, it's like a scene out of Death Note, except for nobody's going to die at the end, where you're just watching this hand as it's moving towards and away from an enter key. Just towards and away, towards and away. And it's just like, hit enter. Like, you find yourself just shouting at the screen, hit enter. Just do it. And it works because it understands the audience it's aiming for, and because BL is becoming a much more popular genre around the world to the point where it had to be made illegal in China because BL content was like all of the entertainment in China, because Apparently they went, this is fascinating. We love it. Yeah, it's resonating with straight audiences too, because the characters are just so adorable and they're so cute. And it's a story that we don't get to see, but we feel seen in it. And there's nothing wrong with writing that story too. And that's where I think we get lost in all of this, is we either talk about how fun it is to torture our characters, or how we feel no shame when they die, or when we kill them, or when we rain misfortune down upon them. Sure, fine, been there, done that, written that book. You know the biggest challenge I could ever do? Write a wholesome story that's just sweet. I don't think I could do it. I think that's a challenge too big for me. And I'm not saying this to like attack anybody's writing. I watched something like Heartstopper, which was a show that I absolutely fell in love with and immediately ordered the book, which is of course on back order because everybody watched the show and ordered the book, and there are none. Because they're all sold and it's going into another massive printing right now. We're all sitting here with our IOUs going, eventually my book will come. Right? That show had an audience. That show, which, again, the main points of drama, like at one point they get locked, two of the characters accidentally get locked in a room before they're supposed to have a concert at the school. And like, will they be found before the concert happens? I mean, that's kind of like traditional drama, kinda. Tao is really afraid that because everybody's got boyfriends and girlfriends now, that the friend group is going to completely dissolve because you can't have friends and a relationship. That's a valid concern, but I mean, it's not like, yeah, that's just kind of there. Like if I were to try to simplify this story, this plot line, down into what we generally think of when we think of plot beats, it's kind of tricksy. But it's a novel story that is constantly doing this whole like dramatic tension through the whole thing. We know that Charlie loves Nick. We know that Nick loves Charlie. It is so obvious. Like the first time they meet each other, it is so obvious. If you didn't know that this is the story of how Charlie and Nick start dating, the first time they meet, you're like, that's the cutest damn meet cute that has ever meet cuted in the history of meet cutes. To the point where I need a special feature because I need to know if that was special effects or a really good lighting director. I need to know which it was that made that scene happen. My money's on special effects because I don't. The logistics of getting the light to be that perfect in that scene, to get the lens flare just right. So yeah, you get what
we have lens flares all the time. We also have to paint them out.
Oh, when Nick and Charlie first meet, there is this circular lens flare that highlights Nick's face, that just encircles him in this tunnel of light. That, yes, you can see the sun outside the window behind him, where this lens flare is technically coming from. But it's so perfectly, like they don't even have the angels sing in this moment. Like, that's the only thing missing, is just, you need to have just like a choir of angels appear around him, just, because it is the cutest damn meet cute in the history of meet cutes. It really is. I need to know. But if that's the story you want to tell, that's the story you should tell. Don't worry about if it's dramatic enough, if there's enough tension in there. Because if you are judging the success of your script based on how many arguments it has in it. You're making season 5 of Stargate, and nobody wants that. And if you're not a Stargate fan and you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend watch one episode from season 5, any episode from season 5. It's on a lot of different streaming services, and sit back and go, who thought any of this was a good idea? Because the ratings were flagging because HBO decided, nope, we're not doing this anymore, and it was moving over to Sci-Fi Channel, which meant it could no longer have the bad words in it. And there wasn't a lot of nudity in the show to begin with, but all of that had to be edited out so that it could be reshown on the regular TV. And the ratings were weird because the show basically got canceled on HBO and got moved over to the Sci-Fi Channel. And the brilliant people at the Sci-Fi Channel said, our ratings are bad because everyone gets along. There's literally a memo. It has been published. You can find it online that our ratings are bad because everybody gets along too well. Just make them snipe at each other constantly. It'll save the show. Like literally some galaxy brain genius sent this message down. And this is season 5 and part of season 6 of the show. It's just they walk into the room and it's almost like, Jane, you ignorant slut. Like, just, but you were best friends like 5 minutes ago. What is going on now? Why are you, wasn't your whole thing that you're kind of in love with her and you kind of hope that you'll start dating? Why are you just yelling at her now? Are you just negging? Is that what's going on? Have you decided to be one of them people? Why is this happening?
So I need to go feed the doggies. I will be right back.
Alrighty. But yeah, it's not the solution to your problems. It really isn't. And this has actually happened on a couple shows where the big galaxy brains have decided, if only they argued more. That's the problem. They're too nice to each other. They're too good friends. Just make them argue. Or my other favorite note that Joe Straczynski got for season 2 of Babylon 5 of, this show would do better, but you have to have an ace pilot who's super cool and doesn't care about your rules, man. Literally the note that he got. And so he created this character, gave this character a backstory, a complete story arc, and he dies in that season. We meet him, he's used up, and he's dead. And when they were like, why did you kill him? It's like, well, we needed somebody to die there anyway, and we thought, hey, he's perfect. People aren't too attached.
Poke, poke.
Just add... that's not how you add drama. This is not how you do it. This is not how you do it. Aww.
Nice.
See, I think characters also... Yeah, we talked about that. See, your character sheets. Yep. I realized my chat wasn't scrolling, so I trying to get caught up here because I started monologuing. Sorry. Right? Yeah. I look. There's a way to tell those stories, but so often followed up by a blank space. Yeah, because everybody's got it in them somewhere. Committed sacrilege by the Nook app. Hey, I've got a friend who has not read any of my stuff, and her argument, which no longer soon will matter, is it's not available in my Nook app. I'm looking at you, Miss Pepper. Can't wait for you to read.
Right. Well, I was sitting here and you were talking and my brain somehow went to the Gallagher Girl series. I'm like, I should reread that series. And then I was like, wait a minute. I only have 4 of the physical books. Where do I have the other 2 books? I know I own this entire series. Where is it? The answer is Nook. Because I used to have a Nook.
But yeah, and Spence, I've stopped watching shows that have done that. as well, because you know what we actually like between our characters? Appropriate chemistry. That's what we like. That their
Blasphemy.
that their relationship makes sense in some way, shape, or form. And when unnecessary drama is brought in just for the sake of, hey, let's get them screaming at each other now because drama.
That's one thing I like about the Harry Potter 5 movie versus the book is there's a lot less all caps dialogue in the movie.
Right.
It's like, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate. And no trashing Dumbledore's office.
I might have one of these books twice, and I might be missing one of these books.
And again, this feels like a sign of an author who did not know where they were going. She was going. And you're fun, because I'm going to keep saying it until everybody understands that this is true. Because almost every time I say this, somebody goes, wait, what now? The biggest thing that I have against the author who shall not be named is she somehow coincidentally, when picking her male pseudonym, picked the name of the man who invented electroconversion therapy for gay people.
What?
And this was an accident, a mere coincidence, and she's not really a bad person at all. So every time you hear me say Galbraith with a lot of anger in my voice, there are reasons. And that is your Joanna Rowling fun fact of the day. And we'll probably be returning to that quite often, because every time I say it, people don't remember that that is true. Because she's very good at the PR.
I'm missing
Just
the
did that one.
fourth book. I have 2 copies of the last book, a digital and a physical, but I don't have the 4th book.
That
Poor
somehow
soul.
just feels like half the series that I think I have like all of.
That's me with my Harry Potter books. I have 2 of the second ones, but I don't have 6 or 7. It's like, oh.
I accidentally wandered into my sad Harry Potter shelf the other day because I didn't know what to do with all my Harry Potter stuff, because all of the stuff that she did happened when I was moving from back there, moving room for the office. And so I just like stuffed them into a shelf that literally has a chaise lounge in front of it, so I never see it, because I don't know what to do with all this stuff, because like I had all the Funko Pops. I had like a lot of Harry Potter stuff that I have very mixed feelings about. And I like
My,
I'm
saw
moving
it
them
down
to the
there.
lower shelf on my bookcase. Because all of those books were gifts, so I don't want to give them away or like sell them. But
And then I started giggling madly because I realized the next shelf over is all of my signed Anne Rice books, which are also down there for so many reasons.
Do you have shelves of shame?
Apparently, I have shelves of shame. They're the lower shelves over by the chaise lounge that's back there.
my
'Cause-
wand display came today, like the little thingamabob to put my wands on, and my lightsaber mount so I can finally put my lightsaber on my wall, so it's not hiding half in my closet. But yeah, I have Sirius Black's wand and Ginny Weasley's wand. One of them is interactive, so it actually interacted with the park, so that was fun.
I have such mixed feelings, that I have not come up with a rubric to process outside of music. And the only way I came to understand this with music is I do not have the energy or effort to keep up with that much celebrity gossip.
Mm.
I just don't, because I never know who's canceled when, about what, because I just assume most musicians are bad people because I know musicians.
Unless they're Weird Al.
I'm sure I listen to a lot of people that I shouldn't, but you know, as I've said a million times, in the realm of rock music, until we stop hearing God Save the Queen or Anarchy in the UK put into any movie just to say punk, because You know Sid Vicious gaslit and murdered his girlfriend, right? Like, he abused her for their entire relationship, gaslit her into believing that he was the only one who cared for her, got her addicted to heroin so she would stay with him, and then murdered her. Right?
Wow.
If that's not, like, this is where when I say I don't know what cancelable offenses are anymore, because
It's
that's
just like straight up evil.
Should that not be one? I don't understand any of this anymore. It's basically what I'm coming to. I don't understand any of this anymore. I've just decided to accept that I am an old now. The gray is not just ornamental. I am an old. I do not understand. Things be what they are. See. Book a moment they run into each other again, and fight, like, yeah. Ugh. So we have about 17 minutes left because apparently I had a lot to say. I didn't really let other people get thoughts in edgewise. I'm sorry. I warned Megan I had feels. I didn't know if they'd be helpful or not, but that I had feels on this topic. Does anybody have any questions or things that they would like to say? And I will graciously be quiet for a bit so that you can say them.
Yeah, just reiterating, videos of locations are great resources just so you can get the sounds of it. If you can, go there so you can get the smells as well. But yeah, they're super cool. And like for one of mine that was going to take place in a real location, an island in one of the Great Lakes, I found the visitor center phone number so that I could call them and ask them all my questions about the location and stuff, because there were stone walls around it and there were different churches from different denominations all on this tiny little island where like not many people live except for sheep farmers. And it's like I wanted to like set up stuff there. So like interview real people that are from those locations if you can. Go there if you can. If not, call in video stuff. It's great resources.
Find out if the area has a visitor center.
Yeah.
It's amazing because tourism is so important to all local economies. Like even my little town has a visitor center because we have brick roads. Did you know we have brick roads? We have brick roads. We have some of the oldest brick roads that are still maintained in the country. Did you know we have brick roads? We have brick. It's the one thing. It's our one thing our town has, and they will not shut up about it. We have brick roads. Have you seen the brick roads? Let us take you to see the brick roads.
Cultural centers and stuff like that. They're usually pretty knowledgeable about the history of the area as well. So if you're not setting it in modern time, but back in times, it's a great resource.
And a lot of towns have historical societies that are often volunteer and are manned by people that absolutely love the topic and will be so grateful to talk to anyone about it because their family's just tired of hearing it. Like, I'm not like trying to disparage these people because I'm not. I love passionate people. But if you've never walked into a historical society and been like, so what's the deal with whatever the thing that you saw in town was, and then realized, oh, I've been here for 3.5 hours and I don't think they've taken a breath yet. Because they're just telling you all the things about that one thing. Because, yes, I was fascinated about that too. Let me tell you about this weird diary that I once found underneath. It was buried under a bookshelf, but kind of in the wall behind the bookshelf. So they didn't want anybody to find it, but we did. And
we weren't doing research for a story. We were doing family history research, but we drove out to Bath, Ontario, my family and I. And we found the church because my mom's ancestors founded the city of Bath. And their names and stuff are in the stained glass windows of a church there. And so we went and we called up the church and they let us in so we could take photographs, and we found the tombstones. And we were talking with the church person there, and they're like, yeah, the house, the Davy house, like it's just right over there. And I know the person, the descendant that owns the house. Let me call them up. And so like we got to go to the house and like see the outside of it and talk to them and get some family stories. We got to go to the historical center or whatever there, and we got to see the original tools used to build the town, owned by my family. Like,
That's amazing.
it's really cool. So sometimes maybe if you're doing research, find relatives of people that were around that area that might have really cool stories. I don't know. That might be a fun option.
Right before the panini, I was doing my family genealogy, and I was so excited because the next time we went to Maryland, I was going to get to go see a thing. Because it turns out that the first generation of Dorsets that moved to the United States lived about 20 minutes from the town in Maryland I grew up in. And Gravefinder found his grave.
Nice.
So I could actually go to where my great grandfather lived and see the town that he lived in. Like, had no idea that most of my life, because I was born in Missouri, lived all over the country. I had no idea that the first Dorset that moved over was a baker who lived in Maryland. He was a indentured servant who worked at a bakery in Maryland, like 20 minutes from where I grew up when I was a kid.
Census records are also great for finding like what types of jobs were around, how many people had which types of jobs in the towns that you're creating or putting it in.
Sometimes cemeteries, if there's like famous people buried there.
They're also census records are also really good for finding names because the U.S. Census Bureau has all the databases up, so you can look at the most popular names for birth years going way back. I mean,
Yeah,
way
you can
back.
also just Google country, probably state, but I know country, popular name, gender, year, country, and you'll find lists. It's really helpful.
This is true. This is true.
Oh
And sometimes they will not answer you, and that's where you have to make other choices. Because I get why I don't get answers, but at the same time, it's making me make decisions that I'm not entirely happy with. But I wish we lived in the day and age where people didn't realize that paywalls were a good thing, because once upon a time you could search the back catalog of so many newspapers online for free.
Mhm.
That used to be a thing. Some small town newspapers, you can still do that. So definitely check that out if you're writing about a particular small town. I think our local newspaper, you can search through like way back in their catalog because they don't understand how the internet works still.
Yeah, when I was writing my story that dealt with Samoa, I was reading Samoan newspapers to figure out like what are the topics that they actually talk about over there.
And also just remember, it's your story. Not all fiction has to be 100% historically accurate. It can be, if that's the thing that you want to tell. And there's a wonderful, beautiful gray area that you can play around in when you're writing in this field. Our Flags Means Death is one of my favorite shows on HBO right now. All of the events in this story are true. Everything that you see, all of the main events actually happened. Steed forgot to steer the ship or have anybody else do it, and they ran aground, and they were stuck there for a while, and they lost their English prisoners. That really happened. The whole thing with the Republic of Pirates, that really happened. The whole thing on Barbados, that we have documentation of that really happened. So much of that show really happened. It's upsetting when you realize how much of that show really happened. But there's a lot of things that we don't know. And those are the gray areas. We don't actually know the relationship that Steed and Blackbeard had with each other. The way Steed Bonnet describes their relationship, it's definitely sounds like they weren't just roommates. Like they merged their pirate fleets together and often slept in the same cabin. And he uses a lot of familiar terms talking about Blackbeard in the actual historical record that leave a lot of wiggle room to maybe they had a thing going on. Because we do know for a fact there were a lot of gay pirates. That was definitely a thing. So
There were also lesbian pirates who pretended to be men or didn't pretend to be men and just flashed people.
Yes.
which is Jim's character was very intentionally made to be one anachronistic because nobody identified as non-binary back then because that wasn't a thing that we had words for. They may have been non-binary back then, but we didn't have the language, so it's kind of like the fun of watching Gentleman Jack. Was she a lesbian or was she a trans man? And the term lesbian did not exist while she was alive. She often, in her journals, talks about how she should have been born a man, but that does not necessarily mean that she was trans. There's some interesting gray areas there. What was Anne Lister? We know that she loved women. She loved a lot of them. She wrote about it in very explicit detail. We have the journals. Someone decrypted them. We know what she liked to do in the bedroom. We know who she liked to do it with, and we know how much each party enjoyed all the different things. Because she journaled everything. So the idea that she was having relationships with ladies, that's not a stretch. Nope. We definitely know. We definitely know that she was having relationships with the ladies. But her journals also have these long tracks where she decries God for cursing her to be born a woman. Is that because as a woman, she could not do the things that she wanted to socially? There's so many ways to interpret that when you're looking at this from a historical lens. Who was Anne Lister, right? And we know that she dressed very mannish. Is that, again, because she was trans? Or is that because she was what we would now call a butch lesbian? None of these terms
Or
existed.
men's clothes were just more comfortable.
Yeah, none of these words existed during the time period that she was alive. So she did not have access to any of this terminology. In fact, she's very interesting in the history of lesbianism because she's trying to define what it is, because she doesn't just want to have physical relations with women. She wants a wife. She's very explicit about this in her journals. She wants a wife. She wants a companion to spend their life with her. And she's really trying to cobble together in this very isolating world. What is she? She wrote 3 million words trying to figure herself out. And we have all of them.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of interesting stories that you can do in history and still be historically accurate. Like going back to Our Flag Means Death, that show is oddly historically accurate. If you know the history of the pirates. Yes, it's playing around with a lot of other fun things because we don't know the words that were said. We don't know exactly how they did some of the things that they did. Why did that one ship catch fire after Blackbeard and Steed boarded it? We don't know. We know that they forgot to loot it for some reason. They just went aboard, apparently spent hours over there, just them and a couple other people, and then the ship burned and sank. We don't know what happened. But we know that this is a thing that happened. And I like the way the show plays around with that and gives an explanation for what happened over there. Stupid snail fork. That's all I'm going to say. Don't want to spoil it too much, but it's a great show. But you can play around with a lot of historicity and a lot of things that you may not know you're capable of doing. A lot of women moved to the West to live very independent lives. And the lives of women on the American frontier was very different from their Victorian counterparts on the coast in so many ways, out of necessity, because there weren't as many people there to uh, maintain the patriarchal control of the women. So they were starting businesses and living full lives independent without the controls that were placed upon them by society back in the East. There's a lot of wiggle room that you can play with. And, oh, yeah, Zheng Yi. Yes. Yes. If you don't know Zheng Yishao's story, definitely look her up. She basically conquered a chunk of southern China and set it up as her pirate empire. And when China came down and was like, no, you're not going to do this, she whipped their butts. And they went, okay, how about if you just don't pirate our ships and work as our functional navy? I mean, pirate whoever else you want, we don't care. But you leave our ships alone, we give you money, and you can loot whoever else you want. Deal? Okay, deal.
So a privateer.
Eventually. Lots of years of just devastating the region before that. She is fascinating. Her story is just insane. It is just mind-blowing. Because it involves, I think, two husbands that may or may not have actually done any of the piracy. Like, it all may have been her all along. Like, it's really one of those Agatha all along stories, because she may have become a pirate because her first husband was a pirate. But we also know from other accounts of her that she was just so bored with her life that she may have forced her first husband into piracy, kind of, because it was something exciting to do and they could better themselves through, like, just stealing the stuff that they wanted. She's fascinating. She's fascinating. Oh, so much love. Definitely look into her. Oh, yeah. So much more. But I feel like that needs to be stressed, that you can be historically accurate and extremely playful with your settings at the same time. You can. One of those few places in life where you can have your cake and eat it too. Because we don't know what happened behind closed doors. We can infer a lot about, why I get personally frustrated when people are like, when are we ever going to have our first gay president? Because I hate to break it to you, but it's happened a couple times. Like, if you don't, just look up William McKinley. There's a reason the kids at Glee went to McKinley High. There's a reason for that. His boyfriend lived in the White House and they shared a bed together, like, the whole time. He was the bachelor president. He never married. Yeah. There's reasons. There's reasons for all these things. And you can have a lot of fun working through all of this on your own. And just remember, no matter what you do, you're never going to be historically accurate for the people that want a certain brand of historical accuracy. They will always come for you with the knives out, because that's just how people are. So do your due diligence, but don't expect perfection. Yep.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah. She's fascinating. She is fascinating. And then, of course, the infamous gay emperor of China, which my favorite story about him is his lover fell asleep on his in his arms, and he was called away for courtly duties, and he didn't want to wake his lover up, so he called for a knife and cut the sleeve of his left arm of his robe off, so he could slide his arm out and not wake up his lover, which is why they often called those sleeveless or left sleeve left arm relationships in China. because this is so cute. Yeah, I think so. I was about to say his name, and then I'm just like, I know I'm going to get this wrong because names are not my thing today.
I think that was also covered on OSP.
Yeah, I think they probably did a.
I think that was one of their videos for Pride, I think.
Because there's so many stories that have never been told. You can find them, you can have fun with them, and still have all of the content, the real world goodness that you want to have in there, and still have fun with it. Because well, my story's set in the 50s, so I guess there has to be racism here. Who says? It's your story. If you want to write an alternate 50s that we're just not going to go there and just have it be not terrible, do it. I've read some really interesting fiction that way. They've done some very interesting things. They kind of show they've almost got a much more sadly melancholy feel to them because it's like this is a world we could have had. If we were but just better, we could have had this world. And so there are ways to do just that's called a window. It's on the outside. Please stop. Sorry, a cat is trying to climb the window to get at a bug on the outside. And,
The audacity of that bug.
I love my cats. They are so smart in so many ways that it's upsetting to me. But the fact that they cannot figure out how glass works bothers me to no end. Like, your entire life, you've tried to get to the bugs on the other side of the magic force field. Just realize there's a
But
magic
today
force.
is the day, don't you know?
Forever live in hope. Yeah. Alrighty. That is it for us today. Does anybody have any final questions before we roll out?
Do you want to share that link for finding out the composition of employment, like bakers and blacksmiths and stuff for a town
Yeah.
with certain populations?
Yeah,
in case
there,
they can't find it for a real
Oh, let
town.
me see if I have that link.
there are a couple different places for that. The one that I shared the other day was at Oh,
You can
come
also
on.
make planets, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a bunch of tools. It was over at donjon.bin.sh.
Oh, you're talking about something very different from
There's
what I was-
also the medieval, what is it? The medieval demographic generator. I think so. Anyway. Medieval demographics. No, that's the one from them as well. Is this one? Oh, they took down the one that I was talking about. Oh, here's one. Here it is. They moved it to another site. This one is insane. This is at welshpiper.com, where they will generate, again, based off of medieval censuses, all of the demographics of a town, of an average town that existed back in the day. Both of those are invaluable. I'm glad that they redirected to the new one because I got really sad when it was like, but it's not there anymore. And this one is just terrifying when you start like looking through all the things that it does.
Some
Alrighty. So starting next week, because we will be in to June, I will be doing productivity sprints during these streams because I have a lot of prep to get ready for camp for World Building Summer Camp and hopefully a Camp Nano project, maybe both, maybe.
Both. Oh my goodness.
There is a chance. Well, I think one might feed into the other. I
Oh,
think that they
okay.
might coincide in a way that might be feasible to do both. We shall see. But I have a lot of prep to do between now and then, so we're going to be doing that. But as always, bring your questions and we can help you out along the way. Also, it will be over here on YouTube. I do want to be doing streams over here as well as over on Twitch, so they will still be over here. Pretty much for the most part, I'm going to be keeping these either very informative, talky streams and the productivity streams over here, and then doing more of the game streams and stuff over on Twitch because I think they work better that way. So hopefully that holds true. And so when we do come back to this topic, please make sure to these like talky episodes, make sure to let me know what you want us to do when we do that so that I can do the prep. And if I don't know about the topic at hand, maybe do that. Because if not, I'm warning you, you're going to get like long-winded talks about like constructed languages and stuff because these are my passions. They might not be yours, but you better believe I can talk for 3 hours about constructing languages and only scratch the surface. That's just a little bit of it. Ask my poor husband sometimes. Just say conlang in his presence and listen to the groan of despair that will issue forth from his very soul for having had to live with me all these years for that. So help me pick topics or you have to live with the ones that I pick.
Techno jargon and techno babble for sci-fi.
Ooh, that could be fun. Alrighty, I also have a new single out. It is called Don't Want. It is available from Project Shadow and all the places that you get your music. It actually got auto-playlisted by a couple things on Spotify, which is interesting. I don't know
It
how
was put into one of my random playlists. Like it was put into my daily playlist, like the daily playlist it makes for me. I'm like, whoa, cool.
Yeah, they wouldn't tell me what they were, but they sent me an email saying that you have been added to, I forgot what the number was, but so many auto playlists.
Well,
And I was
if
like,
you have a daily playlist and you've listened to Charlie's music before, and like something new comes out, like they'll be like, "Oh, they're gonna want this."
so that felt exciting because I've never gotten that email before, and I don't know how all this works because they keep telling me make sure to submit to the playlist, but they don't tell me how. So not that helpful. But definitely check that out. I really like that song. I have a couple other songs in works right now.
Mhm.
So there may be that dance album that I've been threatening for a long time may actually be happening, kind of. So be warned. But I'm kind of working on some stuff. That wise, Super Secret Master Project 1 is moving forward at an amazing pace, and soon there should be announcements.
Ooh, yay.
Very excited about that. And yeah, I think that's all my stuff. What's the rest of y'all got going?
I do have some spots available on my Fiverr for if you need sales copy written or if you need a Google responsive ad, a search ad. I'm really good at those. And also, if you just need your stuff analyzed to see where or critique to see where you can make it stronger and more effective, I do that as well. And you can find that if you follow me on Twitter at I'm Megan McCarthy. It's my top pinned tweet, so you can check out the link there. Yeah.
I've got my Misadventures of a Mom Author that comes out on Fridays on Bella. I'm in the process of writing episode volume 2, and that's going to start going up end of June. And volume 1 will be in a book on August 9th.
Yay!
I have to say the cover is ever so surprising. I had no idea.
Tomorrow's Coffee Bunny. It is on my channel.
Somebody got very excited for Coffee Bunny. Somebody heard the word bunny and was like, I'm going to go get it. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, this week it's on my channel. I know because I've already made the StreamYard thing. Because I was making the StreamYards for. Oh, and I have a stream on Friday. That's going to be 11 to 1. So it's before the Dwaddling Jules the Dwaddling Writers. And not yet, but I'm trying to figure out how to set up possible commissions for like Twitch overlays and Twitch stuff, like panels that people should have. It's $7.
You can't be mad at me because Mango is cute.
With that, there's also an option for it's hourly, but it's $20 an hour, and I will actually hold your hand while you set all of that up. Like, we will be in a video chat, and we can both share screens, and I might also be slightly looking into like possible personal assisting stuff that would also probably need $20 an hour ish.
22 probably. I said 22 to start with for personal assisting.
Spence has a comment.
Yes, I've been working on Noah's stuff. Most of my sketches are done. I've just got to work on the badges, but my intestines were difficult today.
Mm-hmm.
Poor cat.
Hopefully that will be remedied shortly.
Yeah.
No.
I have a horror collection called Tiny Shivers. I have beta reader feedback from 2 people, so I need a few more. So if anybody's interested, please let me know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's 52K. Micro, flash, and short stories. That's it.
Alrighty. Thank you all for being here. If you didn't see, or probably just don't care, I did a video yesterday on my thoughts about the new Strange New Worlds Star Trek series, and I'm actually excited about a Star Trek series, and I didn't think that could happen if it wasn't animated. So, spoilers there, but trust me, I have a lot to say about that show, including their wonderful Uhura. Like they dared to touch one of my sacred characters, and did her right. So definitely check that out. There's no spoilers in there because I want to try to get as many people watching the show as possible to teach the Paramount monster. Do good show, get people watch. That's my goal. So I will probably be talking about Strange New Worlds a bit on there. I've also been watching Prehistoric Planet. If you have access to it, definitely check it out. Dinosaurs, David Attenborough. Need I say more? It's so good. 3 episodes are out. They're doing 1 episode every day this week. And the first 3 episodes are so good. And they're just... if you like Planet Earth and we're like, why couldn't this be about dinosaurs? This is your show.
What is this on?
It is in the US. It is on Apple TV Plus. I think they put the first episode on their channel for free. They do that for a lot of the first episodes in the series. I know they've been putting a lot of clips up there, including the bonus science clips, which are even more fascinating because I love the stories, but I also love that they are doing all this bonus content about the science.
This household. we stand David. And like dinosaurs, so I must let the Natalie know.
It's been so good. And it's the stories you don't expect. And that's the other thing that I really enjoy about it. It really feels like a nature documentary more than we're now going to watch the dinosaurs fight for no reason. Well, we know the reason. You just want to watch the dinosaurs fight. A lot of these shows are like so good. It's so good. The whole sequence with the raptors just so good. But yeah, really enjoying the show. It's broken up by biome, which is also really interesting. So we have one episode about the sea, one episode about the desert, and then the next episode was about fresh water. The next episode is about the tundra and how dinosaurs lived in the snow and ice, which I cannot wait for. That's tonight, actually, or tomorrow, technically tomorrow. But they're going up literally at midnight Eastern time. So by 11 o'clock my time, the new episode is out. So we've been watching them daily, and I'm kind of hoping that this means that they're going to start doing a weekly dinosaur week, because I would be so happy to have dinosaur week and like really beautiful dinosaurs. Anywho, yeah, streaming tomorrow over on Twitch with the game and Brian and Tom, and then Friday, I don't know, we'll probably be continuing our adventures on Kashyyyk, because why not? It's fun. I think it's fun. You all seem to have been enjoying it. We shall see. Alrighty, until next time. Bye.
Bye.